KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 9 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Andy Farnsworth. KSL's top story this hour. A man is dead after being hit by a pickup truck this morning trying to cross 7800 South at 1440 West in West Jordan. Police say the driver of the truck stayed on the scene and was cooperating with investigators. A Texas man was arrested after a high-speed chase through Utah County over the weekend. The driver's identified as Tyler James Flynn, and the Highway Patrol says he reached speeds up to 110 miles per hour on I-15. Court documents say Flynn told troopers he was, quote, having fun during the chase. He's facing charges for reckless driving and failure to respond to officers. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Law enforcement officials in the Los Angeles area are issuing warnings in the aftermath of the wildfires.
The Los Angeles County Sheriff with an urgent warning to people who are taking advantage of a desperate situation.
Don't do it, whether it is burglary, looting, or any other crime. Whether it's a scam of some kind that you're conjuring up to make money off of the poor people that have been involved in this.
Officials warning burglars, looters, and scammers that they will be prosecuted if they take advantage of people who've been through this tragedy. A curfew order has been established from dusk till dawn in the affected fire zones to protect homes.
ABC's Kana Whitworth reporting. Your money at this moment, the Dow, the only of the index is in the positive right now. It's up 176 points to 42,114. Coming up, we've got, it's not emergency traffic, but a lot of slow spots still on the roads. KSL traffic and weather coming up next. KSL News Time 9:01.
The sources where we get our news matters.
When you listen to Utah's Morning News, we want you to feel the stories are important to you and trustworthy. This is Amanda Dixon.
And I'm Andy Farnsworth. Join us weekday mornings on KSL News Radio.
Between all the holiday parties,
weekend tailgates,
and family get-togethers,
we've been overindulging a little more than usual over the holidays. But now, we are starting the new year off on a healthier note by taking Active Liver supplements from New Nordic every day.
Active Liver contains a powerful blend of turmeric, milk thistle, and globe artichoke extract, all natural ingredients that help protect the liver so that it can protect you from toxins. It's like giving my body a daily detox. I've never felt better, and my energy is through the roof.
And my doctor is already impressed with how much better my numbers are looking. So if better health, more energy, and detoxing your body are some of your priorities this year, get Active Liver today and start the year off knowing you're giving your liver some well-deserved relief.
Active Liver is available in both tablets and as a delicious gummy. You can find Active Liver in stores at your local CVS or online at Amazon or newnordicusa.com.
I know the holidays are barely over. They're in the rearview mirror, though, and it's time to look ahead at what is coming up. And Ruth's Chris Steakhouse wants you to remember that Valentine's Day is not that far off. And if you want to make sure that you impress that person that you love, it's time to make your reservations now at either location of Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Talk about a romantic evening and getaway. Hotel Park City up there in the mountains, maybe a day of skiing and then dining with Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And then, of course, downtown Salt Lake City. What a perfect evening for Valentine's Day. Catch a movie, catch a game, whatever it might be. And then at 275 Southwest Temple, dine at Ruth's Chris. The best meal you and your loved one will ever have is awaiting you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. The perfect steaks, the desserts, the side dishes, seafood, poultry, it's all there at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter?
Right? And the best part? They accept Discover.
Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right, so we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Lowe's knows how to help make your Super Bowl 59 party a touchdown. Let us help you prep your home to host with top brands like Charbroil, Blackstone, and LG, so you can be the MVP of game day. Plus, use the Lowe's app to find what you need for a seamless shopping run. Or huddle up with our Lowe's Red Vest associates to help make all your game time hosting decisions.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by My Style Checking from Mountain America Credit Union. Here's Heather Kelly.
We've got big delays on I-215. This is the west side belt as you leave 4700 south in Taylorsville. Just as you're starting to go around the curve toward Woodward Road, you'll hit a wall of pretty much stopped traffic. It's due to a crash just before you get to I-15. That's blocking two left lanes, both shoulders. One of the vehicles looked like it had been smoking, maybe a little bit of fire there. So lots of emergency vehicles on the scene. You also still have the HOV lane shut down, southbound I-15 near Beck Street in North Salt Lake heading into downtown. That is due to an earlier multi-vehicle crash. Traffic there is backed up all the way into Bountiful, and you still have delays northbound I-15 from Murray into South Salt Lake. Murdoch Auto Team is celebrating 100 years of winter journeys at Murdoch Hyundai. Right now, receive 1.99% for 4 years or 2.49% for 5 years on the 2025 Santa Fe or Tucson. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
Today will be partly cloudy with highs in the 30s. Right now it is 25 degrees and partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. I'm Andy Farnsworth from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We are Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Dave and Dujanovic, your morning companions for talk, analysis, and key perspectives on Utah's biggest stories on KSL News Radio.
Welcome into the show, and thanks for joining us. No Debbie Dujanovic today, so filling in for her is Erin Ryder from Inside Sources. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. It's great to be here with you.
Now, you know Erin because she is a local attorney here in the community, was most recently a candidate for Salt Lake County Mayor, and then again, you can hear her often on Inside Sources. So thank you so much for joining us. Today we're starting off, obviously, keeping an eye on what is happening in California. And we'll give you some updates of where we're at in California, the fires that are raging, and as well as some of the price gouging that's going on. Did you know anything about private firefighters? Have you ever heard of private firefighters before?
I have, actually, yes, and I'm not surprised that they're showing up in this.
I had no idea these guys even existed. But absolutely, this has been an interesting development in the story, as well as drones and what happened with one drone that crashed into one of these firefighting planes, and the damage. And what does the future of drones look like, and what kind of regulations? But joining us right now, John Smith is the public information officer for Tooele Fire. But you know him from the Arrow 103.5.
Hopefully,
so that's how I know you, Smith and Sam. Right now, literally as we speak, you're on air. But you're joining us. John, give us an idea. What has Utah been able to do, and what has Tooele Fire been able to do to help out in California now?
Yeah, I put on a really long Queen song so I could run down and talk about it. No, so North Tooele Fire, that's my department, and I, like many firefighters in Utah and around the country, are part-time or volunteer firefighters. So I have a day job, just like a lot of firefighters do, and then we have 4 firefighters from my department, as well as 16 other fire departments here in the state of Utah that stepped up to volunteer for an emergency deployment to Los Angeles. So we have more than 67 firefighters from Utah currently fighting the Palisades fire.
And I have a question, John. So
Yeah.
I've heard that some of the firefighters have been stopped in Sacramento for emissions tests, trying to get in there. And I wondered if you could give us any clarity on that.
Thank you for bringing that up. That is 100% false.
Okay.
That is a rumor that has been going around. That started with apparently one tweet from somebody from Oregon who said that they were held up for a day. There is no emissions testing that goes on. So what happens with an emergency deployment like this? And we do this when out-of-state resources come into Utah as well. What happens is your truck goes through a safety inspection. A lot of the trucks that we use are coming from smaller departments or rural departments. So we want to make sure that they're up to the task of what we're asking them to do. They may not be familiar with Utah terrain. And these trucks are not generally designed to travel 500 to 1,000 miles in a single day. So So they go through a quick inspection process. For the Utah firefighters, it was in San Bernardino, not Sacramento, like some people are saying. On the way, it takes just a couple of minutes. And if there's any repairs or anything that need to be done, they do those there while the firefighters wait at the expense of the agency requesting the assistance.
Okay, so this is a standard thing that happens in pretty much any state that's getting emergency assistance like this, not necessarily just California.
100%.
Being California.
Every state, every fire, every time.
So, John, when our firefighters arrive on scene, how do you manage these resources? Because I've seen firefighters coming from, quite frankly, all over the world. In fact, President Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, even offered firefighter help from Ukraine if needed. I saw an African contingent flying over, and then obviously resources here in the States. How is that managed when you arrive on scene?
It's a massive operation when you have an event of this size, let alone 5 different events burning. Now, so you think about Los Angeles County alone. There's 10 million people that live there. That's more than 45 of the 50 states, their entire state population. So you have to have resources coming in from all over the country. So you have different countries, different backgrounds, different types of trucks, different country. You've got firefighters from Mexico, Canada, South Africa, Australia, Ukraine coming in to fight this fire. You have on the Palisades fire alone, you have 4,700 firefighters from around the country, and that's just one of 5 fires burning in Los Angeles County right now. So it's very tricky. It's a logistical circus. But Cal Fire, they train for this, and being that they are such an eventful state when it comes to fires, they know exactly how to handle this. It's a seamless operation.
How do they decide? Like, at what point do they? And who is it that's making the decision of, okay, we need to bring in extra resources?
Yeah, so the way that happens is it's called an EMAC. It's an emergency deployment where once a disaster has been declared by a state governor, their fire resource or their Department of Emergency Management can put out a national call, and that goes through FEMA. So in our case for Utah, it comes from the Utah Department of Emergency Management, and they put together a figurehead, which in this case is Unified Fire, and they assemble a task force. And all of the departments, they step up, they volunteer resources that we have available, and then we say, okay, this is the kind of truck they need, these are the types of firefighters they need, and then if we have those resources available to spare, we will send them off. And then we, in turn, as a department, we get funded through FEMA to reimburse those costs.
Interesting.
John, let me ask you, when firefighters arrive, this is a 24/7 thing right now, but obviously you have to rest, you have to have shifts. What does a day look like? I mean, when we arrive in California, I mean, how do you rotate in and how do you get people rest so that they're fresh, but it's such a physically demanding job?
Yeah, and so it depends. Sometimes if you're fighting a rural fire in Northern California or Oregon or Washington, there might be a tent city for billeting and catering and stuff like that. But in this case, you have resources all around you. You have one of the biggest metropolis areas in the entire country. So our firefighters are held up in a hotel at night. They're doing 30 hours on, 30 hours off.
Oh, wow.
So they are on the clock for 30 hours going out and fighting fires.
Why so long? I mean, that just seems like such an unbelievable amount of hours to have to. Is it just because it's so hard to deploy the resource?
Yes.
It's easier just to say, hey, you're going to be on for 30 hours and then.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay.
And as firefighters, we can do that. We do train for that sort of thing. And so you get sleep on scene when you can in between. You get short breaks, but you're on the fire line for 30 hours. And then you go back to your base camp or to wherever you're billeting, and then you have 30 hours off to kind of rest, recoup, wash your clothes, repack your kit and stuff like that, sharpen your tools, and then back out you go for another day. So it's one day on, one day off, essentially.
This is a unique fire in the sense that there's so much in neighborhoods, and then there's the wildfire or the forest and the trees and up in the mountains and some of the valleys. There's such a mix here. What are some of the ways you address that as a firefighter when you have it burning down and you're fighting in the mountains as well?
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with 2 very different scenarios, right? You've got your wildland fire and your structure fires, and we have different types of trucks, different types of PPE. But in this case, it's the wildland-urban interface, which, whether you're fighting that in California or whether you're fighting that in Utah, it's exactly the same. We can have events like you're seeing in Los Angeles. We have downslope winds. We have the wildland-urban interface here in Salt Lake and along the Wasatch Front as well. So we train for this, and we train for how to switch gears, change your hat, so to speak, from a wildland firefighter to a structure firefighter, and back and forth. In this case, the fire is traveling so fast with those Santa Ana winds. The best thing you can do is just try and, if you have a structure fire, you have to fight it externally. You have to fight it from the outside. You don't have time to go in and do that, because you would normally have 3 to 4 trucks for one structure.
Right.
We have 12,000 structures that burn down in 2 days. There's not enough fire trucks in the country that could fight that fire. So you just try and get out in front of it best you can, and try and get water on as much of that as possible.
This probably sounds a little ignorant. I just don't know enough about firefighting. But when it comes to air support, whether it's the planes or the helicopters and filling up buckets, is that ever used in a neighborhood as kind of a last-ditch effort?
Yeah, I mean, it's rare, but it does happen, especially with the retardant drops where we drop the red slurry. That more likely to be dropped on a structure, because what that does is, rather than extinguish a fire, that just makes it so that there's less to burn. If you can starve that fire of fuel, then it's less likely to burn the structure down, as opposed to water, which can evaporate. But there's also displacement, right? When you drop 3,000 gallons of water, it has to land somewhere, and if that lands on a house or on a car or on a structure, you run the risk of being counterproductive. But if that's what it takes to put out the fire and save lives and save further property, then yeah, absolutely, that's what you'll do.
Yeah, so I guess that's one of my questions. Like, how do you stop a fire like this from progressing? How do you get this thing contained when, yes, we've got the winds, but how do you stop this thing?
Yeah, I mean, fire is a living, breathing creature. I mean, it needs food, it needs air, and it needs room to grow, right? And generally speaking, it will take the path of least resistance. Just like us as people, we'll take the easiest route, and that, generally speaking, is up. But it will burn down if it has to. So what you do is you starve it of fuel and room to grow. So you'll cut a line around it using bulldozers, using hand crews, using shovels. You'll take away all the possible fuel that it has to burn. And then once it gets to that spot, it just puts itself out.
Well, John, thank you so much for joining us. And I think this will be a very interesting conversation in the future of what are some of the things that we learned from this fire in California, and what can we bring here to Utah? Because there's a lot of the same, issues that we have. We have
absolutely
mountains that burn, and homes that are built right in there, and neighborhoods and communities, and some of the problems that we've seen in California. What are we doing here in Utah to help mitigate that?
Yeah, and with every tragedy, with everything we do, there's lessons to be learned. So watch this, and we learn from it.
John Smith, thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to continuing this conversation. You bring such great insight. Thanks, John.
Happy to help.
All right, you can also listen to John right now, if he's actually on the air, from 6 to 11 on the Arrow, Smith and Sam, but his side hustle as a volunteer in Tooele. So thank you so much, John. Appreciate it. Now, Aaron, one thing that I learned recently, and I didn't realize this was a thing, is privatized firefighters.
Yeah.
And this, I just assumed everything was done through the state. And what I'm learning now is that there are companies out there that absolutely you can call to protect your businesses. And what's happening right now in California is insurance companies are hiring firefighting companies that have retardant and resources and water trucks to come and protect multi-million-dollar structures, and they've been effective. And they have had areas burned down completely around them. I'm thinking of one strip mall that in particular was protected because of privatized firefighters.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I think about privatized firefighters a lot like private security, right? It's similar to law enforcement, but different. Not really. And yeah, I mean, we were just talking about lessons that are going to be learned from this. I think that's a really, really interesting one. You've even seen houses where everything around them has burned down, but that house hasn't, or a house has done certain things that protected it and multiple houses behind it. I think there's some really interesting things that are going to come out of this.
One that stood out to me is they will arrive on scene and they will charge $2,000 an hour. I mean, this is very high end, very expensive. But when you're talking about multi-million-dollar structures, this is what the insurance companies are seeing as a total investment, a smart investment. But they will come in with blankets and cover vehicles to help protect them and that are fire retardant blankets or protective. They will wrap foliage to prevent those things from going up in air or going up in flame. And I think, okay, what kind of role does privatized firefighting hold in America? Have we not tapped into this resource enough? Or do they draw resources away from communities and from states?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? I mean, why are we not using these resources generally? I think that is a really interesting question. And I don't know. I don't know that I have a great answer for that, honestly, because on the one part, if there are extra resources that businesses or people want to pay for especially on the preventative side, fine. I think that's totally fine. But I think actually the prevention piece of this is what's really interesting to me. The stuff that they're doing to prevent the fire, putting the blankets on, wrapping trees, the retardant, whatever it is that they're using to prevent the fire from hitting them. I don't know, that to me, the prevention side of it is really interesting because a lot of times our public resources are more reactionary. Something happens and then we show up and try and address it. What would happen if that shifted a little bit to more of the prevention side as well?
I saw one video that came out on X. It was a very well-off multimillionaire that posted to X. He says, "Does anyone have access to private firefighters to protect our home in Pacific Palisades? Need to act fast here. All neighbors' houses are burning. We'll pay any amount."
Wow.
And since it received incredible backlash, talking about the epitome of nerve and tone deaf. That was one of the comments, and since deleted it. But this is one of the areas where you're trying to figure out, okay, well, if you have money and you have resources, is it immoral or is it unethical to reach out and hire private firefighters to come and protect your house as other homes around you are burning down? Is that very small-minded, and does that really restrict when you can charge $2,000 an hour? I mean, our firefighters are nowhere near making $2,000 an hour, but when you bring in some of this private security, so to speak, does that just make it so exclusive that it undercuts maybe the greater good?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, especially because you look at the individuals who can afford to pay those rates. They're also probably going to be the people who rebuild first, right? Mm-hmm. Because they have the resources to do it. And there's an interesting question there of what should the role of government be in helping, particularly when the people who are most impacted by this are the people who don't have the resources to hire the folks or to rebuild quickly. That's and should the people who have the resources be penalized just because they have the resources?
And again, this is not just rich millionaires that are paying for these private firefighters. Oftentimes, this is insurance companies that are looking to mitigate some of their liability, and that makes a ton of sense as well. If you can spend tens of thousands of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to protect millions of dollars worth of a insurance payout, then it makes all the sense in the world. One of the struggles and one of the problems that I could see is if you've got private firefighters coming into a community, tapping into fire hydrants that are already strained, and they start using that to soak down the home and the surrounding areas, then you can see where that could be damaging if everyone is out just for their own little nook in the community.
Yeah, that to me is the real crux of this whole thing. If you already have a water shortage and you have a fire like this going on, then I think you start hitting the morality question, right? Like what happens when the people who have the resources can start to siphon off something like water, leaving everybody else without it? Like that for me is the real big question here.
Yeah, that's a real struggle with already strained systems. But what these privatized firefighters will do is they will come in with water trucks and with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. They're in trucks and tanks that they can tap into. That it just seems like any way we can add resources, because there are finite resources. You've seen when we are drawing firefighters from all over the country, you can see there's a desperate need, and maybe there is a private solution to this that they can at least supplement in some ways. When we come back later in the show, we're gonna talk about some of the price gouging that is going on in California. I think it's a fascinating discussion to be had. I read from an economist that makes the case for price gouging. That price gouging is actually a good thing. We'll have that conversation later on in the show.
The newest part of your morning, and still so familiar.
When you wake up and listen to a radio show, it's like you're a part of a family. You're listening in on people you know, and it's magnificent that Andy Farnsworth is sitting in the chair because he's someone we know.
Utah's Morning News. Andy Farnsworth joins Amanda Dixon to bring you important news in the car. 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Our military faces a crisis. Recruitment down. Morale weak. Our leaders more focused on going woke than killing terrorists and defending America. President Trump nominated Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense to change things. Hegseth isn't an insider or a swamp dweller. He's a decorated veteran of the United States Army who deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. And he's exactly who we need leading the Department of Defense. Hegseth will ban woke nonsense from our armed forces, strengthen our military, and make our soldiers proud to serve. Call your United States Senator at 202-224-3121. Tell them stand with Trump. Confirm Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. Again, call your senator at 202-224-3121. Tell them to vote to confirm Pete Hegseth and make our military great again. Paid for by American Leadership PAC.
Hey, this is Dan the Laptop Man from PC Laptops. Myth. You might have heard that you need to spend a fortune these days to get a powerful computer. Correction. At PC Laptops, we wanted to prove that wrong. So here's the most amazing deal that we've ever done at PC Laptops for you in over 30 years. The new 2025 S1 desktop or SM3 laptop for only $999. You heard that right, $999. You get a blazing fast processor, 16 gigs of RAM, and over a terabyte of blazing storage for $999. What else do you get? Lifetime service warranty, and we have 12 months special financing on approved credit. Take one home today. Hurry in right now because supplies are limited, because at PC Laptops, we love you. Just check us out at PCLaptops.com. $999, PCLaptops.com.
Boy, right after the holidays, everyone needs a little cash, right?
Oh, yes.
We have great news for you. Right now, UCCU, Utah Community Credit Union, will pay you for your auto loan and credit balances. So all you have to do is just transfer your auto loan or your credit card balance to UCCU, and on top of giving you a low interest rate, which will save you money, UCCU will give you 1% cash back up to $250 on every loan you transfer.
Amanda, as soon as I heard about this, I said, I'm in this exact situation. I transferred. I actually had to have 2 loans to get my car a year ago.
Yeah.
Long story. Got it consolidated into one, and they paid me 1% back for each thing. I've got 1 payment now instead of 2. It's so much easier, and it took me maybe basically an hour. I just went straight to the website. I applied. They said, you got to send me these documents. I did. And all of a sudden, within a couple of days, I had it all set.
This is how easy they are to work with, always looking for ways to help you and your family. You can find out more on the UCCU mobile banking app or just go to uccu.com/transfer. Utah Community Credit Union. You're going to love where you bank.
Now's the time to shop limited-time doorbuster deals during Pro Savings Days at Lowe's. Save $50 on a Little Giant King Combo 6-foot ladder. Was $199, now $149. Plus, save $100 on a DeWalt XR 20-volt Power Stack 5 amp-hour battery. Was $199, now $99. Get these can't-miss deals now before they're gone. Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Doorbusters valid 1/13 through 1/15. Selection varies by location while supplies last.
Now at Staples. Find hot deals on HP, America's most trusted printer brand. Whether you need to print invoices or eye-catching presentations, HP delivers with exceptional speed, reliability, and vibrant color. And with HP, replenishing ink is simple. Find HP ink cartridges in-store at Staples or subscribe to HP Instant Ink and never worry about running out. And right now with home and office hot deals at Staples, you can save up to $150 on select HP printers through February 1st.
9:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Adam Small to look at our top stories this hour. A Utah lawmaker is proposing a new bill that seeks to clean up Utah. Representative Ken Ivory explains how they'll do it.
So we've increased some of the fees associated with the types of vehicles, types of trailers, the locations where pollution is tending to increase, and we've increased some of the fines there, or the fees there rather.
The bill would also increase fines associated with littering and unsecured loads. Ivory says it's important to make Utah clean and pristine before we invite the world here for the 2034 Winter Olympics. This year, Utah lawmakers will also consider a bill that would limit the use of polygraph tests in sexual assault investigations. The bill was discussed last year and garnered bipartisan support, but time ran out to pass it. The bill prohibits investigators from compelling a victim to take a lie detector test. It would also ensure the investigation will move forward regardless whether a test is taken or not. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. A week before President-elect Donald Trump takes the oath of office, his nominees for key posts in his administration are set to go to Capitol Hill for confirmation hearings.
There are 14 Senate confirmation hearings this week alone, starting with Pete Hegseth. That, of course, is Trump's pick to lead the Department of Defense. He comes before the Armed Services Committee tomorrow. The former Fox News host still fending off a slew of allegations, from financial mismanagement to sexual misconduct and alcohol abuse, all allegations which he strongly denies.
ABC News senior congressional correspondent Rachel Scott reporting. Your money at this moment, the Dow is up about 0.3%. The S&P 500 trending down about 0.6%. The NASDAQ down 1.35%. Coming up, no snow in the foreseeable forecast, but temperatures are staying cold. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 9:32.
Mornings are for recharging.
And they're for starting your day right.
We volunteer to join you in the car. Get news and weather at 102.7 FM during the most important part of your day.
Andy and Amanda, each morning between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
We're a couple weeks into the new year, and it's still resolution time, folks. So new year, new you. Have you thought about maybe losing some weight? Salt Lake City Fat Loss is what I used back in February, so I'm coming up on a year now. Salt Lake City Fat Loss was an incredible program for me. They told me that I could lose up to a pound of fat per day. I thought there's no way you're going to lose a pound of fat per day. That's way too optimistic. But sure enough, I lost 57 pounds in 60 days, and it was incredible. And because I saw such incredible results, I stayed on the plan, which is one of the hardest things to do. Is you start a plan, you're super motivated early on, and then you just kind of slow down. But with Salt Lake City Fat Loss, I stayed on it, and I was so impressed with the results. So if you want to try it, go ahead and reach out to Salt Lake City Fat Loss. Right now, they have a great deal, $200 off the program. Right now, it's the New Year Resolution Program, $200 off. Just reach out to them, to their website, slcfatloss.com. That's slcfatloss.com.
Dominion Energy customers in Utah, Wyoming, and Idaho are now proudly served by Enbridge Gas. Enbridge looks forward to a bright future together. To learn more, visit enbridgegas.com.
Traffic and weather together is brought to you by MyStyle Checking from Mountain America Credit Union. Got a new crash called out in Tooele's Main Street at about 2000 North. Not seeing any backups, though. Delays are easing a bit, but still seeing pretty good backups going east if you're connecting from I-215's west belt onto the south belt. The slow and go delays we're seeing for a bit as you pass 2600 South and Woods Cross, crossing from Davis into Salt Lake County, starting to clear up as well. We're also seeing some delays on Bangerter Highway, both sides near the 201 freeway. Use Superior Water and Air for all your HVAC and plumbing needs. Call 974-9090 or visit superiorwaterandair.com. Superior Water and Air, we got this. Partly cloudy today with a high of 34 in Salt Lake, 35 tomorrow. We'll be back in the 40s
hopefully by Thursday. Right now, 25 degrees in Salt Lake City. I'm Adam Small from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Dave and Dujanovic, your morning companions for talk, analysis, and key perspectives on Utah's biggest stories on KSL News Radio.
Here's a story that caught my eye, and I want to have a deeper discussion of what's going on right now with policing and the struggle that police academies are having, number one, with recruitment, retention, graduation. I saw this article in the Herald Journal, and they talked to the director of Bridgerland Technical College's Police Academy, and they were just bemoaning the struggles they are having right now with recruitment, getting people into policing. Filling in for Debbie Dujanovic today is Aaron Ryder, who is a co-host of Inside Sources, also a local attorney, actually ran for Salt Lake County mayor from the Republican side. So what are some of the things that immediately come to your mind when you think, okay, we're struggling to get recruits into the police academy?
Well, the biggest thing that I think of right off the bat is just public perception of law enforcement, right? Particularly stemming in the last few years, maybe since, 2020 and the George Floyd stuff. You've seen it would be really, really difficult to be in law enforcement right now because every single move you make is under scrutiny all the time. And not that we shouldn't be concerned about what our law enforcement officers are doing. We absolutely should. But when you're looking at that as a potential profession and you know that, everything you do may come back to bite you in some way, I don't know, that'd be tough.
It is. And it's not one of those extremely high-paying jobs, right? I mean, there's certain risks or hassles that we take with a job if it is a well-paying job, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're a lawyer. You put up with a lot of lawyer jokes, and because it can pay well. So when it comes to police officers, until recently, I would say probably 4 or 5 years ago, we were seeing starting pay for a police officer at $19 an hour. Mm-hmm. I mean, right now you can make $17 at In-N-Out Burger. Right. And you're saying, hey, come in here, put your life on the line. Now, over the last several years, there's been a concerted effort to increase police pay. Now, starting salary can be, $25, $27 an hour. Mm-hmm. Even some as high as $28, $29 an hour. So there's been some improvement that way. But nevertheless, when you're talking about putting your life on the line every single day, is that worth $50,000, $60,000 a year?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really tough call. And in fact, we saw some of this. I'm making a little bit of a tangent here, but think about this patrol strike that we saw with Vail. Right there, that was part of the argument. Hey, we're putting our lives on the line. We're first responders, and we're responsible for the health and safety of people at the ski resort. You got to pay us for that. And I think there's a similar argument here. We're going out there to protect the public, and you've got to have a livable wage. You've got to have something that compensates for that.
Some of the things that they're seeing, again, pulling from this article in the Herald Journal, is they are seeing generational changes. So just the way we view policing and the role of police.
Yeah, this was really interesting to me.
The rise in extreme idealism among new recruits. What do you think they mean by the rise in idealism?
Yeah, that extreme idealism. Well, it's interesting because what was said about this is that there's been a shift. And it's, and the quote is that they come into law enforcement with this extreme idealism, but not the resiliency to handle it when things don't go well. And that's interesting to me. You look at, there's been a lot of talk, and look, I'm a millennial. And so I grew up with millennials can't handle anything. Millennials are just being
You've heard these criticisms.
I've heard these criticisms for years and years and years. And to a certain extent, sure, I think there's some validity to it. However, we also know that times are just a lot harder today than they have been in the past. And so there's a lot more angst. There's a lot more frustration. There's a lot more going on. And I think there's a little bit of a balance between the two. If you are coming out of high school looking at the police academy, sure, I think there's some validity to be said that can you handle the criticism that comes with that? Can you handle that kind of tough environment? And if you can't, you should not be looking at that profession. But what happens if nobody can handle that kind of criticism?
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. I think of just the change in coaching over the years.
Yeah.
I played high school sports, and I would have a coach get right up in my face and yell and scream and use profanity and call me names and get personal. Like that was Bobby Knight is a Hall of Fame college basketball coach who literally choked one of his players. Right? There's video of him choking a player, and he's like, I don't remember doing anything like that. Like that, it was insane what we let coaches, so to speak, get away with. But at the same time, it did create a certain type of resiliency and in us that I think is beneficial in some ways. But we have changed, and I think that's good. I don't think that's the right way of coaching. But you do see, okay, we're a kinder, gentler coaching nation right now. Therefore, our athletes, they're no longer used to that harsh criticism and being able to maybe look past what coach is saying and what he means by it.
Yeah. This is just such a fascinating question for me because I just came off of a political campaign. And if you're going to get into the world of politics, one of the things I always talk about is that you've got to have thick skin, right? Because people are not kind. People are generally not kind to politicians or to political candidates. And I think there's a little bit of a question out there of what is the balance between helping people develop resiliency and yet also not being maybe even like borderline abusive, we could say, right? What is that balance? Because we've sort of shifted all the way over to the other side. And I don't know that that's helpful.
Right.
But,
we shouldn't be abusing, people at work, and there should be a safe environment. But at the same time, you can't have the pendulum swing so far to the other side where the softest of criticisms is taken, with depression and anxiety and it triggers all of that. That is definitely one of the problems that they're pointing out that the police academy is saying that they feel, and there are multiple police academies across the state, and this is just one, but one statistic that stood out to me is, and again, this is at Bridgerland Technical College, they will have, say, 32 applicants, but only 14 that graduate. So you have less than a 50% graduation. In 2022, it was 28 applicants and only 13 graduated. So you are seeing people step into it, be trained, but only half are graduating. And that is a failure on either preparing folks to know what police work really is, or it's a failure of kids not having the resiliency to see it all the way through.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just that. They also talk about, the academic side of this, but they also talk about the study habits coupled with lower overall physical fitness. They see as issues resulting in a lower percentage of graduates, which to me is really interesting, right? And I wonder how much of that is sort of everybody's on their phone all the time, the video games, the social media stuff, replacing just being outside, kids playing outside.
Boy, the physical fitness aspect of it is very interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
When we come back, I want to hear from you guys. I'm going to share a story. My 17-year-old son at the time told me, Dad, I think I want to become a police officer. And I was shocked by my reaction. Like my initial, I was totally unprepared for this. I'll share with you what my reaction was. But I want to hear from you guys. Have you had to have that conversation with your kids? Did your parents have it with you? What do you say if your kid comes to you and says, I want to be a police officer? What's your reaction? 801-575-TALK. We'd love to hear from you. Do you promote it? Do you say, absolutely, go for it? Or do you tell them, not in a million years? 801-575-TALK. Would you let your kid be a cop?
Stop paying 5-star pricing for 3-star service. It's time for a change. Welcome to Beehive Plumbing's premier experience. With our Beehive Premier plan, you have access to our VIP phone number and website to ensure prompt and reliable plumbing service by an expert 5-star technician. Why Beehive? Our Premier package comes with an industry-leading warranty, giving you up to 10 years of coverage on both parts and labor. Yeah, that's right, 10-year warranty. Call Beehive Plumbing today or visit beehivepremier.com for expert experience every time.
Someone had a birthday.
Yep, 50. Can't believe it.
50 years of wisdom.
Great segue. We have health news, a CDC update.
Pneumococcal vaccination is now recommended for adults 50 or older. Says here, we're over 6 times more likely to be hospitalized with pneumococcal pneumonia than adults under 50.
I don't love those odds.
Same. Look what I found. Pfizer's Prevnar 20 is proven to help protect adults against pneumococcal pneumonia and invasive pneumococcal disease in just 1 dose, and millions have already gotten it.
Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you have a severe allergy to its ingredients. A weakened immune system may lower your response. Common side effects include injection site pain and swelling, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138, visit Prevnar20.com, or talk to your doctor or pharmacist.
I'm on Prevnar20.com now, scheduling my appointment.
Good idea. And happy 50th.
Once upon a time, 2 children stumbled upon a magical house made entirely of candy, but all was not as sweet as it seemed. Join us at Capitol Theater this January and journey into the enchanted world of Utah Opera's Hansel and Gretel, where gingerbread dreams meet high-stakes adventures. The stage will sparkle, the music will soar, and you'll relive the fairy tale you grew up with a twist. Tickets start at $21 and under 30 save 50%. Get yours at utahopera.org.
David Dujanovic.
The police academies are struggling right now with recruitment. And then graduation. There was this article in the Herald Journal that stood out to me. They talked to Bridgerland Technical College's police academy. And this is a small sample, but I think it's interesting. They are having maybe 2 or 3 dozen applicants in a year. And oftentimes they are graduating less than 50%. And there is a massive police shortage around the state of Utah. And they have been struggling to get recruits, getting them to graduation, and then staying in Utah. And that has been a real struggle. So the question we have, and I'd love to hear from you, 801-575-TALK. What would you tell your kids if they came to you and said, I want to be a cop? Aaron Ryder is filling in for Debbie Dujanovic today, a co-host of Inside Sources, is joining me today. What do you say?
Boy, this is hard. When I was younger, my brother wanted to get into the military. And I remember we had a lot of these conversations. And granted, the military is a little bit different than the police, but it was, are you, do you understand the realities of what this would require and what this would entail? And he, like you were saying earlier, he is the kind of guy that you want to show up if there's an issue. He's got a heart of gold and excellent. He's done other types of first responder things, but it was an interesting moment of, wow, we support the military. We are grateful for the military. But when you have a loved one who's making that decision to do that, are you ready for what that actually would require?
Do you encourage them? Angela in Farmington, what do you think?
Hi. Yeah, I don't know. I would have a really hard time encouraging my children just because of how police officers in Farmington are being treated right now. About a year ago, they had a really terrible call, one that no police officer ever wants to get, and they had to make the unfortunate decision to kill a man to protect themselves. And ever since that decision was made, our poor Farmington police officers, who are understaffed and underpaid, are facing constant harassment from the public. They'll be stalked. They'll be confronted by angry people and yelled at and harassed, sworn at, called names, and they'll follow them to their homes. And I asked one of the officers once, well, why don't you guys charge them? And they said, no, that would just make it worse. And so there's also a part where, we're talking about they don't have thick skin, but it's like maybe we have just, as a public, have gotten so, sorry, my kids are knocking on the door, have gotten so aggressive and kind of threatening and hostile that it really isn't very safe, especially for their mental health.
Angela, thank you. No, I think you make some very good points, and this is one of the struggles that I have. Is it's absolutely crucial that we have police officers in our community and the best of the best.
Yeah.
So what are we doing to promote that? Because we are seeing recruitment down and graduation even lower. Let's go to Steve in North Ogden. Steve, what do you think? Do we have Steve? Steve, would you tell your kids to be a firefighter? Or I think we lost Steve. Let's go to Kim in Salt Lake. Kim?
Hi there. I've got a very unique story. When I was 16 years old, I met a trooper in Davis County. I ran out of gas, and he was kind enough to push me to a gas station. And we ended up chatting, and he's like, "What do you do on weekends?" I go, "Really nothing. Just go out with my girlfriend." He goes, "Well, I got something better than that. Why don't you come out and start riding with me?" And I had no interest in law enforcement at the time, but long story short, he was my mentor. He was my idol. He came up every weekend, picked me up. I ended up being a cop. Jump ahead. I did 40 years, retired in 2020. Both my sons at similar age, 16, 17, ended up why they wanted to follow my footsteps. I don't know, but I'm very proud. Both of them became cops, and I'm very supportive, unlike my father, who was totally against it. And I'll never forget this because it still bothers me. My graduation in 1980 from Police Academy, not one person from my family came to my graduation because they were so against it.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
My dad's like, "Why would you want to be a cop? What a stupid idea. You think all they do is drive around and turn on their lights and stuff? What a stupid idea. Go to the U."
Oh, Kim, thank you so much for the phone call. I will tell you my own personal experience with my son, 17 years old. He said, "Dad, I think I might want to be a cop." And it wasn't because, I'll just tell you, my initial reaction was like, "No way. Absolutely not." I'm like, you can do anything, but you can't be a cop. And my wife turns to me in absolute shock and horror. She's like, "You are the most pro-cop person I know." I'm like, "I love cops, but not my kid." And she's like, "Why?" The danger, the public perception, the life and death decisions that are made in an instant as someone is reaching inside their jacket. You don't know if they're pulling a gun or their ID. I mean, it is just I won't say nobody. Oftentimes when a cop, when you have an interaction with a cop, it is negative. They're pulling you over to give you a ticket or, there's a lot of negative interactions with cops. Who's sad to see a firefighter? Everyone loves seeing the firefighters.
That's true. I mean, and I will say that from my experience running for office, my experience just in general, I've met really incredible members of our law enforcement community. I have friends who are part of that community, and it has been interesting to watch over the last few years as public perception has struggled to see how law enforcement has tried to combat that. And, in Mill Creek, where I live, they have, come get coffee with a cop once a month where you can just go talk to the cops. I think it's brilliant.
It is. And we have to have them. And my reaction, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's right. It's very selfish. I'm just concerned about my son. But I think it's the discussion we need to start having. We got to figure out what we're doing wrong that kids and families don't want their family members to be a police officer. We have time for one last call. Let's go Kim in Davis County. Kim, what would you say to your kids?
Yeah, good morning. I lean toward the no way side of the spectrum. I worked with law enforcement as a municipal employee for 25 years. I highly respect them, completely support them, and I'm so grateful there are people willing to do it. There's some great men and women there. But they see the negative day in and day out. Just about everybody they deal with seems to tell them some stretch of the truth, and they often become paranoid and untrusting. And I'm not saying everybody. You can't blanket everybody. But they often become paranoid and untrusting. And most of the law enforcement I interacted with had been married at least 2 or 3 times because it takes a toll on their marriage, on their personality, on their trust. And it is a very hard, demanding profession. They are incredible people that do it. We need them, and we need the best. I'm so grateful for them. But people are crazy. They'll shoot you for anything nowadays, just for pulling them over for a ticket or something. And so
it's incredibly,
wouldn't put my child in that.
Kim, thank you so much. No, it's incredibly dangerous. I can't be that selfish. I understand, like, for the well-being of the community, I can't just say, hey, I need your kid to be a cop, not my kid. But we've got to figure out a way to connect and ease some of the fears that parents have, ease some of the fears that the kids have, because we cannot go without police officers, and we want the best of the best. So thank you so much, folks, for joining in on that conversation.
At KSL News Radio, we have a 30-year legacy of honoring Utah teachers, but we can't do it without your help. Please tell us about an important teacher in your life on the KSL Teacher Tribute Wall, presented by Cypress Credit Union. Each month, one lucky teacher wins a $500 gift card from Cypress Credit Union, a $250 gift card to Harmon's, plus season tickets to Hale Center Theater. Say thanks to your teacher today at kslnewsradio.com/teacher from Cypress Credit Union and KSL News Radio.
If you're trying to decide which gutter protection to put on your home, don't just ask how they'll handle leaves. Ask how they'll handle ice. Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors, and that's right, ice. See, plenty of gutter guards are good at keeping out leaves, but most are made with flimsy materials that can bend, buckle, and break under the weight of too much ice. Kind of a big problem in an icy state like Utah, right? At RGS Exteriors, our exclusive gutter protection systems are built Utah tough. They're made with premium strength materials that hold up to 1,200 pounds of ice per square foot. Simply put, they're not going to budge. Our gutter guards are also certified to handle hurricane-level winds and rain. Mother Nature can't damage them. Guaranteed. Utah Tough Products. That's the RGS way. For a free estimate, call 801-280-3110 or visit rgsexteriors.com. That's rgsexteriors.com or 801-280-3110.
Attention home buyers, want to save hundreds on your mortgage payment or buy a bigger, nicer home? Visit SaveRight.com. This is Rod with the SaveRight team at Realty Path. SaveRight, our name says it all. SaveRight real estate clients often save $300 to $600 a month on their mortgage. Life of loan savings can be over $300,000. SaveRight clients qualify for and buy bigger, nicer homes. Interest rates are around 7%. SaveRight clients can get fixed rates in the 5s. Our affiliate lender makes it all possible. You can even start with a rate in the 2s. If you're buying or selling a home in Utah, save a ton of money. Hire the SaveRight team of realtors. Visit SaveRight.com for more information.
This Friday from 10 to 1, the movie show comes to Sound Sleep. But first, take time to learn about a better night's rest. Sound Sleep delivers oral appliance therapy that treats sleep apnea without the use of CPAP machines. They're professionally fit, warranted, and covered by most major medical insurance. End the days of a poor night's sleep. With offices from Clearfield to St. George, Sound Sleep will help. Call Sound Sleep at 801-716-8672 today.
Jeff Kaplan. When I was a kid, my parents got me a subscription to Newsweek magazine. I would devour every page into the night. And to this day, I sit on my iPad looking for stories for my minute of news, flesh out our coverage, and I get to share the news with you.
Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News, 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings, or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-AL-ANON or go to alanon.org.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
10 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Andy Farnsworth. KSL's top story this hour. Police are trying to figure out why a man who was hit and killed by a truck this morning in West Jordan was even crossing at such a busy location. KSL News Radio's Brianna Willis has more.
Around 5:30 this morning, police responded to a call at 7800 South near 1300 West in West Jordan. Detective Derek Brummel says when they arrived, the middle-aged man was already deceased.
Driver stayed on scene, is currently cooperative with the department. We have multiple witnesses to the accident, and all of them are cooperative as well.
Brummel says the man had crossed where there were no crosswalks. He warns drivers to keep their lights on and to clear their windshields. Brianna Willis, KSL News Radio.
Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Hospitals are seeing a surge of respiratory illnesses across the country.
35 states are now reporting high levels of respiratory illness, and ABC medical correspondent Dr. Darian Sutton says tests check for flu, COVID, and RSV.
The majority of the test results that I'm getting back from my patients are influenza A, and that's reflected in what we're seeing across the nation.
There have been at least 11 pediatric flu deaths this season. Last flu season saw a record-breaking 200 child deaths. Brian Clark, ABC News.
The Ogden Arts Festival is coming back this summer. It will now be under the Ogden Downtown Alliance. Last year's festival was canceled by the previous organizer. The Standard Examiner reports it's scheduled for July 19th and 20th. Your money at this moment, the Dow is up 11 points to 41,949. Coming up, it's going to be cold and dry. We'll check KSL weather along with the traffic next. KSL News Time, 10:01.
A reminder about the simplest way to get updated for your day.
Hit your KSL preset when you jump in the car, and we'll take care of the rest.
Hear key news updates and traffic reports.
Andy and Amanda from 5 to 9 in your car.
KSL News Radio at 102.7 FM.
Start the new year with J&J Garden Center's Plantastic Sales Event and experience a beautiful garden inside your home right now. This Monday through Saturday, shop the stock greenhouses at J&J Garden Center and enjoy 20% off all indoor plants, pots, and black gold all-purpose potting mix. Houseplants add to the beauty of your home, and they can also boost your mood, reduce stress, and purify indoor air. It's true. Plants make people happy. Shop the J&J Garden Center greenhouses for classic favorites and rare finds. The expert J&J Garden Center team will help you pick the perfect plant for any light condition and area of your home. J&J Garden Center open year-round with special winter hours Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Start the new year with J&J Garden Center's Plantastic Sales Event. Take Layton Parkway exit to Main Street and head west on Gentile Street in Layton. J&J Garden Center.
Do you have any idea how hard your heating system has to work when your old windows let the cold air seep in? Your energy bill is going through the roof. But there's an answer, and it comes from Advanced Window Products. For 38 years, they've been building state-of-the-art insulated windows and frames, and every one of them is built right here in Utah. So let me explain why it's cost-effective to call them for new windows right now. First, you'll see a significant drop in your energy bills, winter and summer, and right now, call Advanced Windows and you'll get $2,500 off on 10 windows or more. Triple-coated, argon-filled and sealed double-pane insulated glass that'll keep out the cold, and custom frames in any style, any color. Advanced Windows offers a 60-month, 0% interest payment plan, and they even offer a plan with no payment, no interest for 24 months. Plus, that $2,500 off right now. Call for a no-pressure consultation, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or go to advancedwindows.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by My Style Checking from Mountain America Credit Union. Here's Heather Kelly.
We've got pretty good speeds all across the Wasatch Front. No delays now on I-15 or the east and west side belt routes. If you're near the mouth of Parley's Canyon, though, we do have a herd of elk right in the grassy area in between where I-80 and I-215 come together. It's also right near Parley's Way. Now, right now, they're all standing in a circle just grazing, but at some point, they're going to be on the move. So you definitely want to use caution as you've got this large herd of elk that may try to cross a roadway. At the Utah Auto Expo, we have a vehicle for almost everything, and we certainly have a vehicle for your thing. Mountain America Expo Center, the 17th through the 20th. AutoExpoUtah.com for tickets. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
We should see a high of 34 degrees today, 35 tomorrow, and 38 by Wednesday. Then we'll start to see haze build up because of the lack of storms. Cold right now, though, even though it's partly cloudy. It is only 27 degrees in Salt Lake, 26 degrees in Provo, and Ogden, 21 degrees. I'm Andy Farnsworth from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Dave and Dujanovic, your morning companions for talk, analysis, and key perspectives on Utah's biggest stories on KSL News Radio.
The headline I caught in the Deseret News is half of parents think that a TikTok ban would make their kids safer online. Debbie Dujanovic is off today. Aaron Ryder from Inside Sources is filling in. And Aaron, do you think that a TikTok ban would make kids safer online?
Well, in the sense that we are learning more and more about the negative impacts of social media. So if you just outright ban it and social media goes away, sure, that's going to have an impact. But that's, a fairly broad sweeping way to address some of those issues.
Joining us right now is Lois Collins. This is your article, is that half of parents think TikTok ban would make kids safer online. Now, the Supreme Court is set to hear arguments of whether or not this TikTok ban will take place, and it's supposed to take place on January 19th. But what did you learn from this survey about parents? Half of parents saying, yeah, absolutely, it'll keep my kids safer by banning it.
It was actually a couple of different surveys. Neither one, by the way, is nationally representative. They're indicative, but let's not pretend that they're nationally representative because they didn't have that kind of number and it wasn't a random enough group. Hidden in the headline is that half of parents don't think that it would keep their kids safer. So you have to keep that in mind as well. But this is not a unique survey in that it finds that parents want something done to protect their kids. And I am developing a theory that parents don't want to be the bad guy. So they want somebody else to take a step to keep their kids safer.
It's like cell phones in classrooms,
yeah,
right? I mean,
no.
we could absolutely tell our kids, hey, you're not taking your phone to school today. Leave it right here in this pouch at home. But we don't. We want the school to do that.
No, and we want our kids to be able to call us after school and tell us they're going to see a friend or they're going to do whatever. But when we did the American Family Survey, we found the same thing. Parents are not really sure what should be done. They want something done to keep their kids safer and to keep their kids' mental health up and all those things. But they don't know what they want, so they're hoping that experts will figure it out, I think, is part of it.
Now, what I also thought was interesting from your article is that parents think that there's benefit in banning this for their kids, but there's also some nuance here as to how people feel about it for themselves.
Yeah, there's no nuance whatsoever. They want kids, 50% of them want their kids to not have access, but only 3 in 10 believe that an overall ban is a good idea. Most of them think that they should have a right as adults to have TikTok or whatever. And the other thing that's interesting is that almost 4 in 10, more than a third of them certainly said, well, I'll find a way to get around it. If you ban it for me, I'm going to get a private virtual network or whatever, and I'm going to find my own way to keep accessing this content. So I think what this survey really shows, these two surveys show, is that there's some mixed feeling.
Does it change at all if you change the app, how parents feel? Like, what's the difference between TikTok versus Instagram and Snapchat and Be Real, whatever it might be?
So they did a survey and they asked them, which do you think are the riskiest for kids? And TikTok was the riskiest for kids. Second was Snapchat. Then I think it was Discord. I have a list here if I can find it. Yeah, it was TikTok, Snapchat, Discord, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, WhatsApp, and Twitch in that order. When they said rank these, what do you think are the most risky? They were for different reasons. So for TikTok, they worry about kids seeing inappropriate content. They worry about the fact that it's kind of a bad example of behavior. You don't necessarily want your kid doing all the great things that they see other people's kids doing on TikTok. And a big one for parents is that the algorithms are addictive. And TikTok is supposed to be, and I don't know, I'm not a social media algorithm expert at all, but supposedly it's more addictive for TikTok than for the others. The concerns with Snapchat were different. Snapchat, it was hard to control what your kids could see. It was hard to manage their usage of it. It's a little bit, I think, maybe, I don't know, more subtle. My kids are old enough now that I have totally lost control. I don't even pretend to control what they're doing. So I don't know how kids who are like 13 to 18 are now using these apps. But I know that my 25-year-old is totally addicted.
Now, what you mentioned a minute ago that a lot of people are not terribly sure what should be done for this, but yet there were some suggestions made.
And there were some strong numbers with those suggestions.
Right. So can you tell us a little bit about what are the most common things that people would get on board with?
So the number one thing that people want is for no personal data to be collected from kids. That's 90%. And I personally think it should be no personal data collected for adults too, but that's just me. I don't want my data everywhere. 86% want laws that require parental permission, which I thought was interesting, that it was only 86%, but I didn't see an age breakdown to see if it was like they were asking more parents of 17-year-olds as opposed to more parents of 13-year-olds. And then 84% want parents to have complete access to their kids' accounts so they can see what they're seeing. But you and I both know that you don't necessarily see what they're seeing because they see it in the moment.
Yes.
Right.
And so, I mean, you can see what they are on and you can maybe see some of what they like, what's on their feed in the moment, but you don't necessarily know what your kid saw 10 minutes ago or 10 seconds ago. So that was kind of interesting too. And
Lois, to that point, I will tell you, I've taken probably as an extreme a measure as a parent can take. And I've talked about this on the show several times. I cloned my children's phones. Ooh. So I literally see every text, every direct message, and I tell them, like, this is not like dad kind of in the shadows lurking. I'm like, hey guys, for your safety, this is what mom and I do. We don't monitor it every single day. We don't look through everything, but we like the threat that the kids feel that we have this information. But to your point, we can see a direct message on Instagram until they delete it. Right. If they see it first and then they delete it, then we don't have it. There's a million different workarounds, and I don't know if anyone has a more extreme case than I do, cloning a phone or a better hack than that, and they still have the workarounds with it. So this idea that there's a silver bullet out there to keep your kids safe, I have yet to find it, and I have looked.
You know, and the other part of the conversation for me is to not lose track of the kids that actually do benefit some from social media. And there are studies that show that some kids do benefit. So it's kind of a balance. Are you going to be the parent that doesn't let your kid be hip and cool and have all the connections that other people have? Or are you going to find some way to kind of keep tabs and at the same time expect them to grow and learn and manage? And I don't know what the solution to that is. There are groups of kids, particularly kids who feel disconnected or that don't fit in, who find a community online that may prevent some real harms if they don't find a community. So I don't know how you deal with all this.
One of the things I thought was interesting, another option that was presented was that it looks like, 85% liked the idea of requiring schools to teach safe social media
that
use
is
and
very
digital
popular.
literacy. That's really interesting, especially in the context of everything being discussed right now with public education. And I mean, how do you teach this? What are the parameters that would go into this? What is safe social media use and digital literacy, and what would that even look like if that were included? So I thought that was an interesting one.
That is really interesting. And the thing that's also interesting about it is that you would get, unless there's a formal curriculum that everybody agrees on, which might lean one way or another,
right,
depending on who did the curriculum, social media is not going away. So I personally would want my kids to know a lot about social media and its pluses and its minuses. I would not necessarily want them to have a super curated view of the good or evil, but rather how to judge for yourself to some degree. So that worries me a little bit. But the other thing that's interesting about it is without some sort of curriculum, you've got a 70-year-old teacher who's great at teaching certain things, but is not necessarily as good at teaching the social media aspects or the new aspects, or vice versa. Maybe you've got a younger person who doesn't know as much about it, but you get their experience and what they think is important to teach too. So that even a curriculum has to be carefully thought out if it's going to be effective.
Lois Collins, thank you so much for joining us. A fascinating article. If you want to read this, Lois Collins wrote this in the Deseret News. You can find it online. Half of U.S. parents think TikTok ban would make their kids safer online. Thanks, Lois.
Always a pleasure.
So, Aaron, let's continue this conversation. And what I don't understand with parents, and what I don't understand with Washington as they're banning TikTok is, why TikTok? Because everything that I've experienced on TikTok, I've experienced on some level with Instagram, with Snapchat, with Twitter. There are endless scrolls, there are endless feeds, there's inappropriate content. And I look at it and I think, parents, why are you picking on TikTok? Social media, every app has the same threats and dangers.
Yeah, but I think let's split that into two different things here. We're talking about why is Congress going after TikTok, and then we're talking about why are parents interested in going after TikTok. And I think they're different answers. Lois just mentioned that TikTok's algorithm has been shown to be more addictive than some of the others. I think that makes it an easy target for parents, an easy place to start. Let's start there. You also have the political advantage of TikTok being in the firing line right now. Meta's there too in the wings, but it's really TikTok. But from Congress's perspective, it's as much about the national security risks of China having access to all of that information. If the Chinese government has access to your kids' information from TikTok because Chinese regulation requires ByteDance to hand it over, that's where Congress is coming from, right? It's a national security issue.
And I would be more convinced with that argument if they were trying to shut down other popular Chinese apps like Temu or Shein. I don't think my daughter has bought one piece of clothing in the last 4 years that didn't come from Shein, right? I mean, and so what is it about TikTok? Obviously, incredibly popular, probably the greatest social media app ever created. I love TikTok, and many of us love TikTok. But nevertheless, by January 19th, we're going to have to figure out whether or not this ban actually goes through. And joining us to give us the latest update is our KSL legal analyst, Greg Skordas. Greg, any developments? Have we seen anything recently, or is it still in limbo right now?
Well, kind of both, Dave. The arguments were Friday on the 10th. The court has indicated that it is likely to give us a decision by Wednesday of this week, which is the 15th, which, like you said, would be 4 days in advance of the ban going into effect. There's another interesting sort of caveat here, and that is the ban goes into effect on the 19th, but Trump takes office on the 20th. And he has been a little bit more sympathetic to TikTok. And he has indicated and sort of hinted, and in fact, his people filed what's called a friend of the court brief with the Supreme Court saying, put it on hold for 90 days until Trump's in office. Let him look it over and meet with Congress and see if there's something that can be done. In other words, he's asking for the ban to be stalled by 90 days. Now, I don't know that the Supreme Court's going to do that. They've indicated that they do want to make a decision before the 19th, so we'll have to just wait and see what happens.
Greg, when we talk about TikTok, we've talked about this in the past. Obviously, with its ties to China, the threat, the parent company ByteDance, a national security angle for it when it comes to Congress and the government. But parents, as we saw most recently, they think about half of parents think that it would make kids safer online. So you've got these two maybe adjacent parallel concerns, people that want to ban TikTok for different reasons. Kids look at it from a safety standpoint. The government's looking at it more as a national security issue. Does that interweave at all with what the Supreme Court is looking at?
I think so, but at its core, this is about a law that was passed by Congress in April of 2024, which just said this: TikTok, you can run in America all you want, but you need to divest yourself of Chinese ownership. In other words, you can still stay in place. So there's not the issue about the addictiveness or whatever is going on with TikTok. It's simply about the Chinese government having information about the habits of American youth in a way that they can manipulate the youth, arguably. And I think that's what the government's concern is, not so much TikTok's good or bad. It's just one word, China. And once you get that out of the equation, there's a lot of paranoia right now in our country.
Greg Skordas, thank you so much for joining us. And again, we will continue to follow this because it's not too far away. It's the 13th today. On the 19th is when the ban takes effect. So thank you, Greg, for joining us. Greg Skordas, KSL legal analyst. Aaron, as we're having this discussion, as we're looking at it, you made a very good point. There are almost two different arguments. The concerns that parents have, I think, in some of the recent surveys have shown this, is our biggest concern is about harmful content getting to our children through TikTok. The government seems more concerned about information, data privacy, national security issues. Where do you land on it? Are you concerned? Do you dismiss it? Do you see one social media as threat as much as the other? I'm trying to figure out where people land.
I mean, well, people are all over the place on this. On Inside Sources last week, Leah Murray and I talked about this, and she and I were in very different places on it. I think there's some legitimacy to the national security concerns that Congress has out there. There's no question that China wants to displace America as the kind of global leader, and given the way that the Chinese government operates, I don't think it's inappropriate for Congress to be concerned about data on American citizens being fed right into the hands of the Chinese government. Now, I think there's also another question that's separate, saying, what do we do with social media generally? And this conversation has been coming since Facebook showed up, right? This is something that's been coming for a really long time. What do we do with social media? Is this something that needs to be regulated? And if so, how, right? What is it that's appropriate when it comes to the use of social media, especially if we're now looking at things where, the addiction and the mental health and all of these components that are wrapped into it, but yet it's become another place where people are able to make money. There's information that flows. It has opened the world in so many ways. It's a new technology, and we've got to figure out what that means.
When I see what is happening in other countries, when you start banning social media, I look at what they did in Iran in the midst of some very serious protests and human rights violations that were happening in Iran. What happens? Social media gets censored. It gets restricted. Right. It gets banned. You see the protests that were happening in Hong Kong a couple of years ago. Exact same thing. Social media starts getting banned and restricted. And the arguments that were being made by the Chinese government or the Iranian government are the exact same arguments that we are making right now. It's a danger. It's a threat. It's undermining our community. It's a danger. It's a threat. It's misinformation. I hear the exact same arguments, and it makes me cringe.
Interesting. Because I don't necessarily view them the same way. Now, I guess it depends on what Congress decides to do, what the laws are. Like Greg just mentioned, the law that was passed in the U.S. was simply, hey, TikTok, you can be here. You can do whatever you're doing. You just can't be owned by a Chinese entity. That's very different than TikTok, we're going to tell you how to operate. Now, I think Meta is in the firing zone for some of those conversations, right? And we've seen Mark Zuckerberg come out and, hey, the censorship that we were doing, we're no longer doing, even though we weren't calling it censorship at the time. Yes, I mean, I am not in favor of the government telling social media what it can and can't do from that perspective. But I don't think it's inappropriate to, and maybe the market pressure is enough, right? I mean, Congress hasn't really done much to some of these companies yet, but the social pressure is causing them to change how they act.
And as Greg Skordas told us, the ban, the Supreme Court is looking at this. The ban would take effect on January 19th. He expects the ruling to happen on the 15th, so just 4 days before it happens, but that the Trump administration has asked essentially for a stay and for 90 days to pass so that the new Trump administration can address this, because that TikTok ban takes place the day before Trump is sworn into office.
The best parts of KSL News Radio are so easy to use in the car. Catch the biggest stories affecting Utah's communities throughout the morning. If you miss a newscast, the next one is just a few minutes away. Plus, we have traffic updates every 10 minutes on the 9s like clockwork. We try to make it easy for your commute, mornings and afternoons. Rely on KSL News Radio.
One of the things I've never really thought about is the health of my garage door. I just know, does it go up when I push the button, and does it go down? But what I have experienced is when the thing stops working, when it breaks, when it is not rolling smoothly, or maybe it sounds like a tank that is driving into my garage every single day. Well, Advanced Garage Doors can take care of so many of your garage door issues. One of the things that I love that they offer is any garage door or motor that is installed by Advanced Garage Door includes a free annual inspection and tune-up once a year. So they're going to come in, they're going to look at it, make sure the rollers, make sure the tension is appropriate, make sure that it is balanced properly, because little tweaks and making sure that it's running every single year smoothly will breathe life into your garage door. They install ones that have a 200,000 cycle roller. Now, that may seem like endless roller. You use your garage door a lot. Go ahead and spend a day counting how many times that thing goes up and down, up and down, up and down. I swear my kids don't even know what a front door is. They will open the entire garage door. So go ahead and reach out to the Advanced Garage Doors folks. They are experts, certified technicians 24/7. Their website is advanced-door.com, advanced-door.com, or give them a call, 801-989-DOOR. That's 801-989-DOOR.
Do you find yourself stuck in a timeshare? Get the real facts about the timeshare industry and your options for cancellation. Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group, has put together a free information guide that reveals the secrets the timeshare industry doesn't want you to know, including the 5 ways to get rid of your timeshare. Call now and get this timeshare cancellation guide absolutely free.
Call 800-838-6161. That's 800-838-6161. 800-838-6161.
Mornings can start feeling the same. Wake up, brush teeth, go to work. But with breakfast from Wendy's, it's like, wake up, brush teeth, Baconate with a breakfast Baconator. Roll with the sausage breakfast burrito. Buddy it up with a honey buddy. Or get seasoned with seasoned potatoes. And then go to work. Sorry. When you're ready for a fresh wake-up call, gotta be Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours.
Peyton was a very kind and giving person. At 15 years old, he sustained life-threatening injuries from a motorcycle accident that took his life. His family felt like Peyton would want to save others and made the decision to donate his organs. Because of their generosity, his organs saved a 2-year-old girl, a teenage boy, and others that were desperate in need of life-saving organs. Go to donorconnect.life and read about what it takes to become a donor. Did you know many people think that they're too old or not in good enough health to be a donor? Anyone can be a donor. If you were told that it could save the life for someone close to you, or even a stranger, would you donate? Finding out more on why you should become a donor is easy. DonorConnect.life can walk you through the process and what it takes to simply sign up. Check yes to become a donor when you renew your driver's license. Give hope. Heal life. DonorConnect.life.
Jeff Kaplan. I'm energized by breaking news. First of all, because it's right now, and second of all, because in many cases the audience needs to know. There's no more important service that we can provide, and I find it critically important to get more details to the audience as quickly as possible. There's nothing more energizing than that for me. Not at all. The most important thing we do is breaking news. I am gratified that so many people listen to me every afternoon on KSL, but what they don't know is that there are so many people behind the scenes making it happen, checking on the traffic, answering the phones, making the calls, talking to the newsmakers. They're out in the street, into the field to get the raw information, and then putting it all together so that I can sit in front of a microphone and be a source of information every afternoon. But there are so many people who make it happen. That's what you don't know.
Ride Home with Jeff Kaplan, weekdays 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
10:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Andy Farnsworth. KSL's top story this hour. The U.S. Forest Service is looking to clear vegetation from thousands of acres of land in southern Utah in hopes of reducing wildfire risk. KSL News Radio's Adam Small has details.
The Forest Service wants to thin out some wildfire fuels across more than 200,000 acres of land around Iron and Washington counties, though Pine Valley District Ranger Joe Rechsteiner tells St. George News only about 127,000 acres would be treated, saying they'd look to leave patches where vegetation is thinner in some spots. Not all the land would be treated or cleared the exact same way.
Officials say they think the project will also benefit wildlife and the people who visit this land. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Santa Ana winds are predicted to return to Southern California through Wednesday. And today, firefighters are scrambling to build as many containment lines as possible. The president of the Edison Power Company also says they're looking at videos showing a fire at one of their transmission towers last Tuesday.
Typically, when there's a spark created by equipment, you will see that kind of electrical anomaly. We haven't seen that. That said, we have not been able to get up close to the equipment yet.
He says they'll be transparent as the investigation goes on. Weber State University is the latest school to roll back DEI efforts. The university has removed the words inclusion and equity from its mission statement. Weber State says it was to keep in compliance with House Bill 261, which overhauled DEI efforts across public schools, colleges in the state. Your money at this moment, the Dow in the positive, 158.25 points. That's about almost 0.4% to 42,097. Coming up, it's cold, but dry at least. KSL weather coming up next. KSL News Time, 10:31. The sources where we get our news matters.
When you listen to Utah's Morning News, we want you to feel the stories are important to you and trustworthy. This is Amanda Dixon.
And I'm Andy Farnsworth. Join us weekday mornings on KSL News Radio.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer? Can we sleep cooler? Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side, your Sleep Number setting. And now it's our lowest price of the season on our top-selling i8 smart bed. Your best savings plus special financing. Exclusively at a Sleep Number store near you. All Sleep Number smart beds offer temperature solutions for your best sleep. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.
Mornings can start feeling the same. Wake up, brush teeth, go to work. But with breakfast from Wendy's, it's like, wake up, brush teeth, Baconate with a breakfast Baconator. Roll with the sausage breakfast burrito. Buddy it up with a honey buddy. Or get seasoned with seasoned potatoes. And then go to work. Sorry. When you're ready for a fresh wake-up call, gotta be Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by My Style Checking from Mountain America Credit Union. Here's Heather Kelly.
We've got a crash in Tooele County. This is on Main Street, northbound in Tooele City. It's right about 2200 north. You've got 3 right lanes blocked. Only 1 left lane is getting through. That is causing a little bit of delay in the area as you come out of Tooele City and head up toward I-80. Otherwise, you've got a pretty good drive on I-15, the east and west side belt routes in the Salt Lake Valley. You have a little bit delay, though, on I-80 and where I-215 merges at the mouth of Parley's Canyon. UHP stopped all traffic for about 10 minutes to let a herd of elk cross the road. They've done so successfully. Traffic is now moving, but you still have those residual delays. Murdoch Auto Team is celebrating 100 years of winter journeys at Murdoch Hyundai. Right now, receive 1.99% for 4 years or 2.49% for 5 years on the 2025 Santa Fe or Tucson. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
Well, we don't have any storms in the forecast, but that means haze will start to build later in the week. Today's high is 34 degrees. We're not quite there yet. Right now it's 28 degrees and partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. I'm Andy Farnsworth from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Dave and Dujanovic, your morning companions for talk, analysis, and key perspectives on Utah's biggest stories on KSL News Radio.
Why do Americans keep electing senior citizens? That's an article from the Deseret News. Jay Evenson wrote this. And filling in for Debbie Dujanovic today is Aaron Ryder, one of the co-hosts of Inside Sources. And Aaron, I'll ask you the question straight up. Initial reaction. Why do Americans keep electing senior citizens?
As someone who's run for office, this is something that definitely hits home for me, especially in Congress. I ran for Congress in 2022, and even then we were talking about this. There is something to be said for incumbency, and once you are in office, it's much easier to stay in office than to win a new office. And I think you've got, people who win those seats and just stay.
They stay and they stay and they stay, and there's some very apparent examples and very, very stark examples here in Utah. Think of Orrin Hatch, think of even Mitt Romney, Bob Benna. You've got people that started off serving maybe in their 50s, 60s, stayed until their 80s.
Yeah.
And even beyond. So joining us right now, Jay Evenson with the Deseret News. Why do Americans keep electing senior citizens, Jay?
Well, it's a good question. Thanks for having me. My question is, what's happened to Gen X? Why are they not assuming their role? By now, we should have had a Gen X president, but we haven't. According to the latest figures, they have now taken over a majority of the House, but they're not asserting themselves the way they should. So that's number one is, where is the next generation of leaders? And then my second concern is, and you've alluded to it, we're going to see more cases kind of like Kay Granger. Now, Kay Granger, a Republican from Texas in the House, she just disappeared last year. Nobody knew where she was. She missed more than 300 votes. And then we find out from her family that she'd been checked into an assisted care facility, and none of her constituents knew about it. But first of all, we have to understand that not everybody who's extremely old is going to be infirm or is going to need assisted care. But the possibilities seem to rise the older you get. And we need to address this issue of what do we do when a member of Congress begins to lose his or her ability to do the job? How do we recognize that, and what do we do about it?
Now, one of the things, Jay, that I thought was interesting from your article is that this Congress is the third oldest Congress on record. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I've been told.
That's fascinating to me, because if you think about it, right, we've been talking about this for a while. Kay Granger is the most recent example. We saw this with Mitch McConnell, though, all of the issues with Mitch McConnell over the last little bit. Even now, Nancy Pelosi using a walker, using assistance on the House floor. And, I think, and your point, I'm a millennial, so your point about Gen X is an interesting one, because J.D. Vance is my age. J.D. Vance is more in that millennial category. And so, but however, when I was running for Congress, and actually when I was back in D.C., I worked for Senator Hatch on the Senate Finance Committee when he was the chair. And I think there's something to be said for the fact that he, at the time, he was president pro tem of the Senate, which means he was one of the most high-ranking officers in the Senate. It was in part due to his longevity. So, I mean, I'd be curious, Jay, like, just what do you think about the role of longevity and those leadership positions in Congress and the value that they bring, as opposed to the sort of the downside of getting the Kay Grangers and the Mitch McConnells, who are frankly just there too long?
Well, longevity is very important, and I don't know how you change that system. So you want to build up power. You want to get all the perks that come with seniority. And I will say this about Senator Hatch, because I met with him frequently in Washington. To his credit, he knew when it was time to quit. He knew when it was time not to run for re-election. The hardest thing I think that a person can do is to voluntarily relinquish power. And we've seen this through the years. The question then becomes, well, how do you identify when somebody is no longer capable of doing the job? And what do you do about that next? And, I've been looking at this for a couple of years now. I don't know the answer to it. We've confronted this with local offices in Utah, and I've come up with some solutions to it, but it's never perfect because it's a political system, and you're always going to have accusations that the other party is trying to make you look like you can't do the job and trying to get you out of office. So it's a delicate, difficult thing, but I think we're going to be facing this question more and more over the next few years.
Jay, this is going to be a long question, so just settle in and let me get through it, because I'll eventually ask a very pointed question. But I'm reminded of an interview that the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Gordon B. Hinckley, had with Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes.
Right.
I'll never forget this moment where he was asked, is this a church just run by old men? And President Hinckley's response was interesting to me. He said, "Isn't it wonderful to have a man of maturity at the head, a man of judgment who isn't blown about by every wind of doctrine?" And that stood out to me. I thought, so often, and it's almost become fashionable to criticize our elder statesmen.
Yeah.
And we almost say, the senior citizens running this country. Is sexism, ageism, is it anything more than just blatant ageism at some point?
There is that component, and I agree with you. There is nothing that can replace that kind of wisdom, and having lived long enough to have experience that helps with the job. I think to some extent that's why Americans elected Joe Biden 4 years ago, was because of kind of the steady hand of someone who had been there for a long time and been in politics for a long time. And so, yes, you can't replace that. On the other hand, we have to confront the fact that the older a person gets, the more likely he or she is to encounter a diminished cognitive ability. And so we're left with this question of what to do with that. For some people, it never happens. Chuck Grassley, the Republican senator from Iowa, is 91 years old. He's in the middle of another Senate term, and he's doing quite well. There's no one questioning his abilities. So it's really not about age so much as cognitive abilities, but we do need to find a way to try to address that, I think, going forward.
You're right. It's very difficult, and to figure out what is going to be the standard, who makes that determination. And I think a lot of people would argue that the voter themselves, they're the ones that have to make that determination. Jay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. You can read Jay's stuff at the Deseret News, Deseret.com. Why do Americans keep electing senior citizens? Now, I want to continue this conversation, Aaron. I'd love to hear from our listeners right now, taking your phone calls. Do you view this? Why do you think Americans keep electing senior citizens? Do you think it's because they do like the wealth of knowledge, the maturity, the judgment that is brought through maturity, or do you think it is just a blatant power grab and that people just can't say no to elected office once they get in there. 801-575-TALK. Let us know. Why do you think Americans keep electing senior citizens? 801-575-TALK.
Boy, right after the holidays, everyone needs a little cash, right?
Oh, yes.
We have great news for you. Right now, UCCU, Utah Community Credit Union, will pay you for your auto loan and credit balances. So all you have to do is just transfer your auto loan or your credit card balance to UCCU. And on top of giving you a low interest rate, which will save you money, UCCU will give you 1% cash back up to $250 on every loan you transfer.
Amanda, as soon as I heard about this, I said, I'm in this exact situation. I actually had to have 2 loans to get my car a year ago.
Yeah.
Long story. Got it consolidated into one, and they paid me 1% back for each thing. I've got 1 payment now instead of 2. It's so much easier, and it took me maybe basically an hour. I just went straight to the website. I applied. They said, you got to send me these documents. I did, and all of a sudden, within a couple of days, I had it all set.
This is how easy they are to work with, always looking for ways to help you and your family. You can find out more on the UCCU mobile banking app or just go to uccu.com/transfer. Utah Community Credit Union. You're going to love where you bank.
Our military faces a crisis. Recruitment down. Morale weak. Our leaders more focused on going woke than killing terrorists and defending America. President Trump nominated Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense to change things. Hegseth isn't an insider or a swamp dweller. He's a decorated veteran of the United States Army who deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. And he's exactly who we need leading the Department of Defense. Hegseth will ban woke nonsense from our armed forces, strengthen our military, and make our soldiers proud to serve. Call your United States Senator at 202-224-3121. Tell them stand with Trump. Confirm Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. Again, call your senator at 202-224-3121. Tell them to vote to confirm Pete Hegseth and make our military great again. Paid for by American Leadership PAC.
An airliner takes off from the Pacific Northwest, carrying 101 passengers and crew. Most aboard Flight 293 are active duty military and their families, headed to Cold War assignments in Alaska.
Surveillance of the Soviet military buildup.
But somewhere over the ocean, with no distress call, the airliner plunges into the icy water below.
Even if all 4 engines quit, that aircraft would fly.
There were no survivors and no bodies were ever recovered. For decades, loved ones were left to wonder
what happened to Flight 293. And why hasn't there been any follow-up?
The government turned its back. Passengers and crew of Flight 293 were forgotten by everyone, except their families.
Unless we pursue it, we will never be issued a true explanation.
Unsolved Histories: What Happened to Flight 293 is available now. Follow us at unsolvedhistoriespod.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Dave and Dujanovic. Dave and Dujanovic.
Why do Americans keep electing senior citizens? We're taking your phone calls, 801-575-TALK. Why do Americans keep electing senior citizens? Aaron Ryder is filling in for Debbie Dujanovic today. You're an attorney. You've run for office. You're a host of Inside Sources. And this was one of the biggest complaints about Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. When he was running for re-election, this was poll after poll after poll. He's too old. He's 81 years old. Donald Trump is 78. Mm-hmm. They're basically the same age, but it's a giant problem for Joe Biden, not a problem for Donald Trump.
Well, it was a problem for Joe Biden because of the debate that they had, where he looked, like Jay said in his article, it's not necessarily about the age, it's about the cognitive ability.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one to measure as well, because we can see. Now, initially, when we started seeing President Biden slow down and stumble with his words and mix up names and become forgetful or days off, a lot of times we were like, no, you know what? That's just him. You'd hear the excuses. He had a stutter growing up and he just is not a smooth communicator. So you'd hear all of the excuses in the world, but eventually it became too much where even George Clooney, one of the biggest donors, writes an op-ed and says he's absolutely unprepared. He cannot do this. The too much decline, and that ultimately forced him out.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I really have two questions on this, Dave, that I've been thinking about. One, does this change if people are happy or unhappy with what's happening in Congress? Do we care? Is it age and maturity if we like what they're doing? And is it cognitive decline if we don't like what they're doing?
Well, a great case in point again, Trump and Biden.
That's right.
They're basically the same age, but you like what he is selling. You like what America likes what Trump is selling, so therefore age is not as big of an issue. But with President Biden, didn't like what he was selling, or maybe folks saw real cognitive decline and said, no, this is different for him. But we're taking your phone calls, 801-575-TALK. Let's see who we have on the line. Is it Shyla in Ogden? What do you think, Shyla?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Thanks.
Hi. Yeah, so basically I'm just taking the whole ageism side out and saying let's do term limits. If we do term limits in our Congress, it doesn't matter. You serve your time, you get reelected maybe one more time, and then you are out. You can then serve as something like a staff of another member. That way we don't have to worry about people being in their 20, 30, 40 years. And that, would basically also address your concern about the seniority question, where a lot of people are voting their elected officials in because they have more seniority. If there is a continuous rotation, that way we're able to essentially kind of fix that question, and people can make that decision every election if they want to elect that person in, knowing that that might be their second and last term.
Shyla, thank you for the phone call. One of the concerns I've heard about term limits, and Aaron, having worked back at, was it in D.C. that you worked back, or you just worked for?
No, it was in D.C. on the Senate Finance Committee.
One of the concerns is that when you're rotating out representatives or senators with that level of frequency, is that the power of the bureaucracy, the lobbyists, the staffers, the full-time staffers start having the real power, and it's no longer the elected officials.
Yeah, and I think, the devil's in the details with all of these issues, right? How long? What are the term limits? And you wouldn't probably need different term limits for the House than the Senate, but what are they? And how does that vary? Because you're right. When I first joined the Senate Finance Committee, I remember talking to a couple of the staff attorneys and saying, what do you guys do if this changes from Republican leadership to Democratic leadership, or whatever it is, because the chair really gets to choose a lot of the staff for who serves on those committees. And they're like, well, then we probably go get different jobs. And that just means massive turnover. There's not a lot of continuity or stability with what's going through there.
And do you lose that expertise when you're constantly shifting people over? It's a great conversation to have, Shyla. Thank you. Alex in Magna, you bring up an angle that I hadn't really thought about, which is, why don't we have a Gen X president yet? And that was something that Jay Evenson brought up in the Deseret News, his opinion piece. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, Alex.
I think part of the issue that happens is with this generation, now I'm a Generation X, and with technology and social media and all that, our generation is getting a microdose of situations, and so they take it as that is experience. And so when they actually get into the seat, they realize that, oh, I didn't actually have that much experience as I thought, and then they start to backpedal because they can't formulate the resolution to whatever's happening. And I deal with it all the time. I'm over 500 employees, and I've learned that like working for me because they tell me that you're a lot more mature in your thinking and your reasoning when it comes to things. And I get it because I attribute it to my upbringing where I didn't have as much social media aspect, but I grew up with adults. There wasn't a lot of people my age. And so the maturity that I got was kind of sped up because I was around all these adults, and I was around older people that were helping me to think faster, to not let me fall so far away.
Alex, thanks for the phone call. I appreciate it. I do look at Gen X, and I'm a Gen Xer, and people they've asked me before, like, hey, why don't you run for something? I'm like, that is a nightmare. Like, you to bare your soul to everyone, to have everyone just pepper you with criticism nonstop. Like, no, thank you. Like that, I love talking about issues, and I love doing deep dives into issues and trying to figure out solutions. But I mean, you've run for.
I was gonna say, yeah, you're talking to the wrong person here. I've done it twice.
And would you sell it to somebody else? Like, oh yeah, you definitely ought to get into this, or have you been soured by it?
You know, when I first decided to run for office, one of the things I was really concerned about is what happens if you run and lose, and is it just it, you know?
Yeah.
And I had a mentor who said, look, as long as you run a good race, there are 1,000 benefits that can come out of that, whether or not you win the race. And I think that's very true. If you run a good race, I mean, my network is so much bigger. My knowledge base is so much bigger. My experience, my love for the community. So, yeah, I mean, but you got to know why you're getting into it.
The question we were asking is, why do Americans keep electing senior citizens? In part because they're the ones willing to run, right? I mean, you have to be willing to run. You have to be willing to stick yourself out there, Aaron. And to your point, to go out there, to get a black eye, and maybe do it again and again, and keep running and stand on your values and communicate. That is, and raise money.
Yeah.
And that's another angle to it. So why do we keep electing senior citizens? In part, it's the path of least resistance, I think, quite honestly. So thank you so much for chiming in, folks. We always love when you participate with your phone calls.
The best parts of KSL News Radio are so easy to use in the car. Catch the biggest stories affecting Utah's communities throughout the morning. If you miss a newscast, the next one is just a few minutes away. Plus, we have traffic updates every 10 minutes on the 9s like clockwork. We try to make it easy for your commute, mornings and afternoons. Rely on KSL News Radio.
Let me tell you guys about Mountain Home Services. Now, Mountain Home Services it's kind of a recent thing, because what they did is they took two companies that you know very well. Master Electrical Service has been around since 1954, and Mountain Air. So Mountain Air installed my furnace years ago, and then they would do the service every so often, and it was fantastic. We just were so happy with Mountain Air. Well, when you combine Mountain Air and Master Electrical, now you have Mountain Home Services, which touches so many levels of expertise. Electrical needs taken care of. Those generators, recessed lighting, HVAC, heating and air, plumbing, you name it, Mountain Home Services can take care of it. So, also they do fireplaces. You may not have realized that, but when you have such expertise in so many different areas, Mountain Home Services can come into your house and be that one-stop shop for you and hit all of your needs in your home. It comes with an upfront pricing guarantee, no hidden fees, 100% satisfaction guarantee. All you have to do is reach out to Mountain Home Services by going to their website, mountainhomeservices.com. That's mountainhomeservices.com, or you can check them out and give them a call, 801-543-2222. That's 801-543-2222.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
The following is a test of the emergency alert system. This is a monthly coordinated test of the broadcast stations and cable systems in your area. Equipment that can quickly warn you during emergencies is being tested. If this had been an actual emergency such as severe weather, earthquake, or evacuation, official messages would have followed the alert tone. This station serves the Utah operational area. This concludes the test of the emergency alert system.
Air Lake Lake provides an experience that every family member can enjoy. Whether it's snowmobiling, snowshoeing, ice fishing, or just cozying up by the fire. Bear Lake in the winter is a great escape with your family. Dive into 3 of the most beautiful cross-country and snowshoeing trails in Utah. Play on 350 miles of backcountry snowmobile trails. Or try your hand at ice fishing. Bear Lake is where memories are made and joy is shared. Visit bearlake.org and make your vacation plans today. And don't forget, the monster is coming and it wants you and your family. And that's great news, really, because it's time for the Bear Lake Monster Winterfest, January 24th and 25th. Winterfest is all about an incredible celebration of winter and all the fun it brings. Cisco Disco, Monster Plunge, Monster 5K, the Chili Cook-Off, Trails Day, and a cardboard boat regatta. Bear Lake awaits. Visit BearLakeMonsterWinterfest.com for pre-registration times and locations.
The murder of 2 men forces their families to wrestle with impossible questions. Who is forgiveness for? Does everyone deserve a second chance? Follow Season 2 of The Letter, Ripple Effect, at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
11 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jessica Lowell. KSL's top story this hour. A man is dead after being hit by a pickup truck this morning trying to cross 1440 West and 7800 South in West Jordan. Police say they don't believe the man was hit in the crosswalk at the time. The driver of the truck reportedly stayed on the scene and is cooperating with investigators. Police haven't released any of the names of the people involved. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. There are now 21 confirmed deaths in the Los Angeles area as fires continue to ravage the area. That number is expected to rise as crews comb through the scorched areas.
26% of our damage inspections for dwellings have been completed.
Anthony Maroney, fire chief of the County of Los Angeles, says the 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew is still in effect for the mandatory evacuations areas. Damage assessments are underway in Japan after an earthquake in the south of the country.
Japan marked Coming of Age Day today, a public holiday celebrating young people reaching maturity. In the evening, a strong earthquake estimated at magnitude 6.9 shook the southwestern region. Small tsunami waves followed, but warnings have now been lifted. Authorities reported no disruption to nuclear reactor operations and advised residents to remain cautious as additional tremors may follow. Anthony Trotter, ABC News, Tokyo.
Your money at this moment, the Dow is up 228 points, S&P down 12, NASDAQ down 151. Coming up, cold and dry. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 11:01.
Mornings are for recharging.
And they're for starting your day right.
We volunteer to join you in the car. Get news and weather at 102.7 FM during the most important part of your day.
Andy and Amanda, each morning between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money managers, but we're different.
Are you really that different than the rest of us?
We are. As a fiduciary, we always focus on what's best for our clients.
What services do you offer besides investing?
We have a team of specialists in financial planning, estate planning, and more.
Your clients rely on you for all that?
Yes, we ensure clients receive unparalleled service at every step of the relationship.
Okay, but you still sell commission-based products, right?
No, because we believe that's a conflict of interest. We prioritize service over sales goals.
So, then how do your fees work?
We have a simple and transparent fee that's a percentage of our clients' portfolios. So we do better when our clients do better.
Wow, we're more different than I thought.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million+ products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Mornings can start feeling the same. Wake up, brush teeth, go to work. But with breakfast from Wendy's, it's like, wake up, brush teeth, Baconate with a breakfast Baconator. Roll with the sausage breakfast burrito. Buddy it up with a honey buddy. Or get seasoned with seasoned potatoes. And then go to work. Sorry. When you're ready for a fresh wake-up call, gotta be Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours.
You bought a house. Or maybe you're building one, but it just isn't feeling like home. Not yet. AMC Building Materials has this undeniable knack for transforming a house into a home. Your home. How do they do that? They combine years of exceptional kitchen and bath creations with your ideas. In fact, customer satisfaction is their #1 priority. You know what you want. You know it's not going to be cookie cutter. And this is exactly where AMC shines. AMC delivers exceptional quality, bold-style kitchen and bath designs, along with their exceptional value and a timeline you'll love. Most projects are complete by the elite AMC professional installers in under 10 days. Immerse yourself in the beauty, function, and feel in person at the AMC Building Materials showroom in Salt Lake City. Get directions and schedule your free estimate at amckitchenslc.org. AMC Building Materials, transforming your house into a home. amckitchenslc.org.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by My Style Checking from Mountain America Credit Union. Here's Heather Kelly.
Well, things are looking good along the Wasatch Front, especially if you're on I-15 throughout Utah, Salt Lake, and Davis counties. No delays either northbound or southbound. It's out in Tooele County we've got the issues. If you're on Main Street heading northbound out of Tooele City itself, we've got a pretty bad crash involving a couple of semi-trucks. And they're blocking 3 right lanes. Only 1 left lane is getting through. That's on Main Street, right about 2200 north. Right now, there's not quite enough traffic to cause huge delays, but that will change as the commute wears on. Lagoon is hiring full-time year-round ride maintenance technicians and electricians with journeyman or apprentice level experience. Apply online at lagoonpark.com/jobs. Must be 18 years of age or older to apply. Heather Kelly in the KSL Traffic Center.
Things will stay mostly dry for the next 7 days, and temperatures will start to creep up later in the week. A high of 34 today, but by Thursday, a high of 41. Right now, it's 30 degrees and partly cloudy. I'm Jessica Lowe from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Dave and Dujanovic, your morning companions for talk, analysis, and key perspectives on Utah's biggest stories on KSL News Radio.
The FBI was working together with California law enforcement to try to piece together what had happened when a drone crashed into a Super Scooper aircraft, one that was fighting the fires in California. And yeah, there was this drone that's flying in the air. It collides with the Super Scooper. It doesn't bring down the plane, but it does cause significant damage. In fact, you look in the side and there is a gaping hole in the side of the plane. Aaron Ryder is filling in for Debbie Dujanovic today. And Aaron, it got me thinking about drones and like how common they are, how affordable they are. And I think it's just going to become more and more prevalent.
Yeah, one thing that we've talked earlier in the show about social media and how we're kind of in uncharted territory with some of these things going on. Drones are another one that are new technology that we're going to have to figure out a whole bunch of things with drones. I didn't realize this, but even here in Utah, there are drones flying overhead all the time delivering packages constantly. We don't see them, but they're there. And that shocked me when I found that out. So now we have an instance where a drone was there to help and ended up colliding with this aircraft, causing damage to the aircraft. What do we do with that?
Yeah, and what laws are in place right now? Because we have made some changes and regulations about what you can and can't do when it comes to drones. But it looks like they have actually made some arrests of who might have been flying that drone.
2 were arrested for 1 drone incident. To my knowledge, we have now had 2 specific drone incidents that have resulted in 3 arrests. So as I talk to our community again. If you do not have business in the evacuation areas, do not go there.
Chris Newman joins us right now. He's the founder of Drone Pro Academy. And Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Can you give us some insight on what is allowed and what is not allowed when it comes to drones? Because a lot of hobbyists out there, they grab one, they're easy to fly, they're fun to fly, but what can you legally and not do?
Yeah, Dave and Aaron, unfortunately, a lot of people just think they can just take it up and fly as high as they want, wherever they want, right? They don't take the time to actually figure out the laws and regulations to keep everybody safe, because that's really what the FAA wants, right? They just want everybody to be safe, especially when you're flying with, around full-size aircraft, which is not a cool thing to do. So some of the basics that they say is don't fly over 400 feet, right? That's just kind of a standard rule. That's above that is where the full-size helicopters and airplanes fly. But also, you have to be careful for helicopters because you can have life flight that's coming down, right? You could be legally flying at 100 feet, but a life flight, if you're next to a hospital that has a life flight, then you got to watch out for that. Obviously, don't fly close to airports, right? That's where the crewed aircraft with passengers are coming and landing, so you don't want to fly too close to airports. Yeah, they've got that law. They've also got registration. You're supposed to register your drone if it weighs over 0.55 pounds. And you can do that on the FAA website.
Now, do you need to have a license as well? If you register the drone, but do you also need to have any sort of training or anything like that? Because I think most people don't know these details. They don't know these rules and restrictions.
Yeah, so technically you're supposed to register the drone, but there's not really a test that you're supposed to take that's mandatory. You can take a free one that the FAA has. It's called the FAA Trust Exam. So I recommend everybody out there go check that out if you're just getting started and you're just flying for fun. That's the FAA Trust Exam. Just Google that. You can log in and you take this free exam online, and it just kind of walks through all these different things, right? Don't fly around airports. Don't fly above this height. Don't fly over wildfires, right? So it kind of walks you through all those basics, but unfortunately people don't know about it. The other type of test you can do is called the FAA Part 107, and that's the one that if you want to make money with your drone, then the FAA requires you to take that test. And so it's a in-person test. You have to sign up at a local testing facility in your area. It costs like $170. It's got a lot of the same questions that that real pilots take when they take a test, and so it's pretty difficult. But if you want to really learn the nitty-gritty and make money, or even if you don't want to make money but just want to learn more, the FAA Part 107 is a great option.
We're speaking with Chris Newman, the founder of Drone Pro Academy, and I think a lot of people will look at their drone and these smaller drones and think, oh, what's the risk? But when you look at the damage that was done to this Super Scooper in California, it was significant damage and very well could have led to something catastrophic. Can you speak to why your drones, even your smaller drones, can be dangerous?
Well, you've got a bunch of different factors, right? You've got the actual weight of the drone, and then how fast the drone's going and how fast it's going to collide with an aircraft. I mean, aircraft are flying very, very fast, and their wings are very lightweight, right? So you can produce lift. And so when you've got this, a hard rock that slams into a wing, it makes sense that it's going to do some damage.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. I think are going to have to address more and more how we handle drones in our everyday life. As you were saying, Aaron, we have them delivering packages today here in Utah.
Yep, that's right. And it's going to be really interesting to watch how this changes, with lots and lots of things coming with drones over the next several years for sure.
I want to continue focusing on California and the wildfires, but pivot a little bit to some of the struggles they're having right now with price gouging.
Whether those arrests will eventually be for price gouging, because we have been seeing price gouging with hotels, people offering residences well above the 10% addition that they can charge. We've seen that with medical supplies, other types of supplies, price gouging going on.
That's the DA in LA County where they are seeing price gouging. This was just a press briefing today. They're warning businesses that if you price gouge, if you jack up your prices, as he said, over 10%, that you may be prosecuted for price gouging, which is illegal. And I thought I've seen some examples where it is staggering, the amount of price that's being charged right now.
Yeah, particularly in the realm of rent and housing needs, right? Where there's now a major housing shortage, particularly for short and medium-term housing. We're seeing properties that are being listed for twice the amount. I mean, it has risen significantly. And what I find interesting is that in California, once the governor declares a state of emergency, landlords are not allowed to charge more than 10% above what they were charging before the emergency took place. And so now that's where we've got this price gouging coming in. People are seeing the opportunity. They know that it's there. But Dave, I know you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, this was something that I found fascinating. I was listening to a book on tape from Thomas Sowell, a very famous economist, and he wrote a book called Basic Economics, where he actually makes the case for price gouging. He's saying that price gouging is actually a good thing. Instead of demonizing it, look at it as a very necessary thing, especially in emergencies. And when I first heard that, I thought, there's no way you can win me over on this argument. It just seems so immoral to price gouge.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Tell us, because I can see a lot of holes with this right off the bat. So give us a couple of instances or examples that might, to help make the case for price gouging.
For price gouging. Because we saw some of this here in Utah when we had COVID come in. And there was a run on toilet paper. And all of a sudden, you couldn't find a packet of toilet paper anywhere in Utah because everyone had gone in, purchased it up, and they were hoarding it, more toilet paper than they would use for 6 months. And then all of a sudden, when they started releasing it, your toilet paper was twice the price. And some people were claiming, this is price gouging, this is illegal. So that's where my mind went. I'm like, okay, we've experienced this on some level here in Utah. This is what Thomas Sowell said. And again, the book was Basic Economics. It's not a light read. This is pretty heavy read. But he said, when you have a supply, let's say whether it's toilet paper or let's say bottled water. This is an example he used. Say you need bottled water in California. You are desperate for fresh water, bottled water, and they need bottled water. And you go to your local supermarket, and they're like $5 per bottle. That's a total price gouge. He said the reason that's actually a good thing is then you will have other companies, let's say Pepsi and Coke and even beer companies. They will say, I can make more money producing water that is in desperate need in California than I can making soda. So I'm going to stop producing soda. I'm going to start putting water in cans, and all of this stuff they've done in the past, right? I'm going to start putting water in cans, and I'm going to ship it off to California where it's needed. I'm going to increase the supply. I'm going to flood this area with supply. Therefore, your company, the local grocery mart, can't charge you $5 a bottle because somebody else has it, and they'll charge you $4 here or $3 here, and then you bring competition in. When you have scarcity, when you don't have water, and there's no incentive for anyone to stop down soda production or stop down beer production to start creating water because there's no financial incentive. Therefore, they won't do it. So you have to have the financial incentive to get these companies to say, okay, we're going to redirect our supply and give what is needed.
Yeah, this is so interesting. I feel like I'm in one of my MBA classes again.
The philosophical discussion.
The philosophical discussion of economics. What's interesting to me is I can see some benefit to that argument, and I can certainly see a case for that argument. But there are a lot of assumptions behind that argument. First of all, you're assuming that these companies can make that production shift quickly. And maybe if you're Coke or Pepsi, where you're already producing bottled water, you can. You just turn the lever and ramp up water production and ramp down soda production. Okay, that can probably happen pretty quickly, but you have to be able to make that shift fast, because in a natural disaster like this, where people need bottled water to drink because your utility lines are down or whatever it is, you can't leave people hanging where the only it's taking weeks to get production up and running. You've got to get these things in 24 hours.
Yes, and another thing, it's a good point. It's like how many goods out there can quickly pivot around. Now, that is on the production side of things. Let's say you have a warehouse full of stuff, and that your goods. Let's say you have a bunch of tents, and California needs temporary housing. At least here's some tents at the bare minimum. And if there is a desperate need for tents, you could price gouge on tents. Again, this is all hypothetical stuff. Say you could start price gouging on tents. Well, if you've got a warehouse full of tents, you say, listen, we're going to empty out that warehouse and we're going to send it to California where there's this huge demand for it. And it's worth it to say, I'm not going to send tents to 50 states. I'm just going to send them all to California because that's where the biggest need. But now I may hurt relationships in other parts of the state who are expecting my tents to arrive. So I'm going to have to bring more people in to produce. I'm going to have to pay overtime so that I can meet my needs across the country. But it makes too much financial sense to just send my entire supply to California where there's the biggest need. I'll address the other places with overtime and, expanded manufacturing later.
Yeah, I see interesting arguments on both sides of this, because on the one hand, I am a tried and true Republican capitalist. I like the free market, and I like it when the market's able to function and do its thing. And this is a market-based argument. There's no question about it. But is there a moral, where is the moral requirement? What is the ethical requirement when you're dealing with something like a natural disaster? And does it change? Because we talked about this a little bit earlier. If you have resources to bring in your own private firefighting department, you can afford to pay a price gouged water bottle or tent or hotel room or whatever it is. But if you don't have the resources to pay for that, is there a moral obligation on the companies or on the government to step in and say, we've got to make sure that people aren't left without shelter simply because we're allowing the market to do what it needs to do? I don't know. I'm conflicted on that.
Another argument that Thomas Sowell will make when it comes to price gouging, or the benefits of price gouging, he says right now, when you don't have, if you have like flattened prices where you say, you cannot charge more than $1.50 for this water no matter what. You can raise it to $1.65, but you can't raise it above that. He said, first come, first served isn't equitable. So oftentimes when you have this limited supply of a water bottle, so a crate of water, then it really becomes first come, first served. So you arrive, and if you live close, you're golden. If you have to travel, you're in trouble. If you can wait in a line, you're golden. If you don't have all day to wait in a line for water, then you're in trouble. And what price gouging does is it prevents over purchasing and hoarding. Because right now, what do they say? If we have, you see this with eggs right now. If you go into the grocery store, they say, no, you can only take 2 cartons of eggs. But with price gouging, you'll say, okay, buy as many eggs as you want. It's going to be $20 per carton. So you're going to be saying, well, I'm not going to buy 2 months worth of eggs, or I'm not going to buy 6 months worth of toilet paper. I'm not going to buy up all of the water that is available just because I'm close. Because if I can go in there and I can buy up an entire crate of water that is $1.50, absolutely. And then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to sell it for $3, right? When you have price gouging constraints, then it doesn't lead to moderation, because the incentive is, oh, the price is good, the supply is low, I'm just going to buy it all up.
Interesting. I mean, you're making some really great points here, and again, the capitalist in me says yes, this is absolutely the way that it needs to work. But I just wonder, what does this look like? What is the requirement for people who need access, who need to have access? Something like housing. This is where I think this can really break down with housing. You can't just increase the supply of housing overnight. You know, and so what do you do with people when people need shelter, they need somewhere to go, but you've got rents that are being doubled overnight?
No, it's a great question. So, for example, right now, when you've displaced so many people, you have not nearly enough hotel and motel rooms. And if you're charging $60 or $70 a night or $100 a night in hotel rooms, then people gobble that up in a heartbeat, right? And that's what they're dealing with right now. If you say, fine, it's going to cost you $500 a night for a hotel room, that's going to price out the vast majority of people. But maybe that opens up a different market. Maybe you will start renting out your basement or renting out a room to that you're like, oh, it just makes too much sense. I can rent out my basement. Maybe I can finish, a little area, an ADU. I can do some of these things because it financially makes sense. It makes sense now because there's such a premium for housing. But when you say, listen, you've been charging $75 for your hotel rooms, now you can only charge $85, then they're just going to get gobbled up. And maybe it's not worth it for me to rent out my basement because I can only charge, a fraction of the cost. It's not worth it financially.
Interesting. I also think some of these points matter at different times during a crisis, right? Like right now, I can see a lot of people opening up their homes just out of the goodness of their hearts to say, come in, please come in. We'll shelter you. We'll give you a place to stay. But that doesn't last forever, right? And so maybe price gouging for water makes some economic sense now because you can drive that supply into California quickly. But on something like housing, right, what do you do a month from now, 2 months from now, when it's going to take months, maybe even years to rebuild this area, right? What does that look like at that point? Because temporary price gouging just to drive supply in and bring in open up new market space, that's one thing. Long-term price gouging, to me, that might be something a little bit different.
It's a great conversation, and I think it's important to look at it because initially my gut reaction was, oh yeah, we got to tamp down on this, but the unintended consequences can be severe.
The newest part of your morning and still so familiar.
When you wake up and listen to a radio show, it's like you're a part of a family. You're listening in on people you know, and it's magnificent that Andy Farnsworth is sitting in the chair because he's someone we know.
Utah's Morning News. Andy Farnsworth joins Amanda Dixon to bring you important news in the car. 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
One thing that I love about Connecticut is they just came into my house and installed my water softener. This was years ago. It was a matter of hours. It was not a disruption to our family at all. They came in, highly trained, total professionals, came in. They tapped into the plumbing. They hooked everything up, and we had our soft water so quickly with basically zero interruption in our day. So oftentimes when you think about making improvements to your house, you might think, oh, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't want to be in the chaos. That is not what happens with the Connecticut water softener when they install it because, again, you're dealing with experts. And sure enough, enjoying the benefits of soft water has been incredible, especially in the winter months right now where it's so cold. Man, it's been cold today. But when it's so cold, it just feels like our skin just dries up. It is just so incredibly dry. We have to bathe in lotion every single day. But with soft water, it has made a huge difference in keeping our skin from drying out too much, making sure that it's hydrated and soft. So if you're interested in getting some soft water into your home and making that investment, and it's more than just the skin that it affects your expensive appliances, your cleaning, your dishwasher, laundry, all of that stuff. Soft water has been fantastic for our family. Go ahead and reach out to Connecticut of Utah. They're an authorized Connecticut dealer. 801-576-8600. That's 801-576-8600. Or check them out online at softwaterutah.com.
This is Derek Overstreet of the New Millennium Group and host of Stop Working and Start Living Radio. If you're close to or in retirement and you don't have a tax plan, call us right now, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Listen, our country's been spending like never before, and the tax bill is coming soon. If you need an income tax strategy and a financial plan that will get you through the rest of your life, give my team a call, 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. If you want an investment plan that allows you to keep more of your gains and pay less taxes, give us a call, 888-999-6370. My team specializes in the type of plan that will get you retired 3 to 5 years sooner than you thought possible. So, get a no-cost tax analysis by calling 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. My team is standing by now.
In 2024, dating is a disaster. We've been ghosted, breadcrumbed, stuck in situationships. Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm Caitlin. Welcome to our new podcast, Dating at Her Age. Dating has been so dicey for us, so we asked KSL, can we launch an all-new podcast about it?
People use these dating apps. You're not really dating when you're on the dating app.
Dating at Her Age, brought to you by Mountain Home Services. A new episode drops every Thursday on KSLNewsRadio.com.
Experience the true value of clean with Zero Res, where your carpets are transformed without harsh chemicals or detergents. Zero Res's patented technology ensures your carpets stay cleaner longer, making it safe for both the kids and pets. Unlike traditional cleaners, Zero Res leaves your carpets dry in hours, not days. Plus, enjoy peace of mind with the Zero Res Gotta Love It guarantee. If you're not satisfied, Zero Res will re-clean for free within 30 days. Right now, get an amazing deal. Have 3 rooms of carpet cleaned for just $109, and Zero Res will clean a hallway for free when you mention KSL News Radio. But that's not all. Zero Res offers a wide range of cleaning services, from air ducts to upholstery, ensuring every corner of your home shines. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Call today and experience the Zero Res difference. Book your appointment now and let Zero Res bring cleanliness to a whole new level. Call 866-ZERO-RES or go online to ZeroRes.com to schedule your appointment today with Zero Res.
11:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Claire Scott. KSL's top local story this hour. Texas man was arrested after a high-speed chase through Utah County over the weekend. The driver's identified as Tyler James Flynn, and the Highway Patrol says he reached speeds up to 110 miles per hour on I-15. Court documents say Flynn told troopers that he was, quote, having fun during the chase. He's facing charges for reckless driving and failure to stop and respond to officers. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. A man has been charged for stalking WNBA star Caitlin Clark.
The Indiana Fever select Caitlin Clark.
Indiana police say the number 1 pick in the WNBA draft was forced to alter her public appearances and the places she went for fear that 55-year-old Michael Lewis would be there. Lewis has been charged with felony stalking, sending numerous texts and explicit DMs to Caitlin Clark from his social media accounts. Lewis is from Texas but was arrested in Indianapolis and acknowledged to officers who detained him any relationship he had with Clark was purely imaginary. Sherry Preston, ABC News.
Your money at this moment, the Dow is up 239 points, S&P down 10. Coming up, partly cloudy skies. KSL Weather's next KSL News Time, 11:32.
A reminder about the simplest way to get updated for your day.
Hit your KSL preset when you jump in the car, and we'll take care of the rest.
Hear key news updates and traffic reports.
Andy and Amanda from 5 to 9 in your car.
KSL News Radio at 102.7 FM.
Mornings can start feeling the same. Wake up, brush teeth, go to work. But with breakfast from Wendy's, it's like, wake up, brush teeth, Baconate with a breakfast Baconator. Roll with the sausage breakfast burrito. Buddy it up with a honey buddy. Or get seasoned with seasoned potatoes. And then go to work. Sorry. When you're ready for a fresh wake-up call, gotta be Wendy's.
At participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours.
Okay, I have to tell you. I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest. The last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the...
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your...
windshield wipers. eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying...
just beautiful.
Whatever you love, find it on eBay. eBay. Things people love.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by My Style Checking from Mountain America Credit Union. Here's Ricky Meese.
Nice and quiet on the Valley freeways with no problems reported and good speeds. In Tooele County, we have an accident blocking a couple of right lanes of traffic northbound SR 36 Main Street at 2000 North. It's been there for a while. It still may take a little bit to clear. Just stay to the left and you can get around it without a problem. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
A high of 34 today with partly cloudy skies. Warming temperatures continue through the week with partly cloudy to clear skies expected until Saturday. Right now it is 30 and partly cloudy. I'm Claire Scott from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Dave and Dujanovic, your morning companions for talk, analysis, and key perspectives on Utah's biggest stories on KSL News Radio.
Utah gets dealt a blow from the United States Supreme Court. Utah's lawsuit against the federal government over the management of unappropriated lands in the state has been denied by the United States Supreme Court. I caught this in the Salt Lake Tribune. What does this mean? Well, that's a little bit trickier in the sense that, do you even know what is going on with the federal lands here in Utah? Like, is that something that every Utahn just thinks about all day, every day? We'll try to break it down a little bit for you. But Aaron Ryder is joining us today from on loan from Inside Sources. Aaron, not only are you going to bring a lot of your expertise here in public lands. I don't know if you have an expertise in public.
I don't think
any of us have a lot of public lands expertise, but you are a lawyer. So you're one of two lawyers that are here at the station. Greg Skordas we tap into occasionally as well. But I do want to know, what's the significance in your mind? What did you think when the Supreme Court said, you know what, your lawsuit against the federal government, that's not going anywhere?
Yeah, this was I know there was a lot of hope for this case to have a different outcome. What happened here is that the Supreme Court refused to even hear the state's challenge. So they didn't even have the chance to argue this thing before the Supreme Court. And I know the timing of this case was very intentional from the state, because the hope was that, hey, we have a more conservative court. Chevron deference has been overturned, which gives deference to the regulatory agencies. This is a chance for us to go in and try and reclaim some of the public land that the federal government controls here in Utah. Now, to your point, Dave.
So, sorry, let me just expand on that just a little bit. So when the Chevron doctrine gets overturned, for example, the thinking is the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, may not have quite the influence or can't dictate as much as they have in the past?
Yeah, exactly. Chevron deference basically gave a lot of, it deferred to the regulatory agencies. And the idea was that we are going to make an assumption that the regulatory agencies are acting with the correct intent when we review these cases. Well, that has been overturned. And so it's going to open the door. If you're in the legal community, Chevron deference, the overturn of Chevron deference was just one of those things that everybody nerded out over, right? Like, oh my gosh, this is a huge thing. And so we're going to see a lot of lawsuits come up because of that. And this one was really just kind of getting into it. Now, it's not just the Bureau of Land Management. We're also talking about the Antiquities Act with presidents who come in, like President Obama declaring Bears Ears to be a national monument. That's something that's been hotly debated in Utah for a long time as well. And so the fact that the Supreme Court refused to even hear this, I mean, that's a massive, massive blow to the state.
A lot of people probably don't realize how much of Utah is federal land. Mm-hmm. And it is upwards of 2/3 of the entire state. In fact, if you look at the federal lands map, and there's a little hot chart of federal lands, and you look at the western United States, it is largely federal lands. Yeah. It is, and Utah is as covered in federal lands as any state in the country.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why this matters so much, because especially in those parts of the state. Now, I want to clarify, too, that the state wasn't necessarily trying to take over the monuments or the national parks. Right. They were going after the unappropriated land. Hey, we're a big state. We're growing. We have resources that we need access to. We want to control and maintain this land. And, but yeah, I mean, you're talking 2/3 of the state. That's a big deal.
Yeah, when you're driving around, you see the millions of acre of nothingness. A lot of that is just federal lands.
Yeah.
And what are some of the concerns, or what were the hopes if Utah was able to claw back some of these federal lands and make them state lands? What would Utah have been able to do with those lands? Because wouldn't they have to purchase it from the federal government, or
I think that was the That was the idea, that they would have to purchase it. Looking on both sides of this, you've got families, you've got ranchers, farmers, et cetera, people close to these federal lands that have used them for decades, ever since really first settlers came to Utah. And the concern is the Bureau of Land Management comes in and just cuts off the access to lands that those ranchers need and that they know how to take care of, because they've been doing it for decades and decades and decades. On the other hand, you have groups like the Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance that says, no, if Utah gets their hands on this land, they're going to develop it, they're going to mine it, they're going to drill it, they're going to do all these things. It's going to kill all of these beautiful areas. We want the federal government to take over that because they have the intent, they have the motivation, they have the interest in preserving it.
And I look at that, and I have spent a lot of time, a lot of my youth in my early 20s outdoors. I was a whitewater rafting guide, so I spent a lot of time in southern Utah, and I've enjoyed some of the most beautiful parts that Utah has. I have also been through the most garbage parts of Utah, right, that nobody should be interested in. I don't care if they drill, down to the core of the earth, because there is nothing redeemable about some of these areas in Utah. And I am very sympathetic to the beautiful and the historic parts of Utah. I also know that is not the majority of these federal lands.
Yeah, that's true. And I think most people would agree, and I've, in my campaign for the 2nd Congressional District, this was a big issue because you're right down there by Zion. I think, in fact, 3 of the 5 national parks are in the 2nd District, so this was a big deal. And the issue is not preserving our lands, because nobody's really in favor of getting rid of Zion National Park. Right. We love Zion National Park, and we want to maintain it. We want to take care of it. The issue is who's controlling these lands and who's caring for them. And is it some federal agency in Washington, D.C. that doesn't understand the culture and the needs of Utah? Or is it people here? That's one of the arguments, right? Is it the people here who know how to take care of this land and have an incentive to do so because their livelihoods depend on it?
And what kind of resource is the federal government giving to Utah when it comes to these federal lands? Or when you're talking 2/3 of Utah and hundreds of millions of acres of land that needs to be cared for, what is the federal government actually doing to take care of them? And largely, it's just not to touch them. They don't do anything with it. They don't. It is untouched and unpatrolled, and it creates a real difficulty of who's in charge if there's an issue in some of these federal unincorporated lands.
Yeah, and the federal government is technically supposed to compensate Utah for those lands. They're supposed to pay a portion. Now, it's a teeny tiny fraction of what those lands are actually worth. So you see some areas, particularly out in Duchesne County, Vernal area, where they really struggle economically because so much of that area is federal land and they can't do anything to it. So you've seen people like John Curtis in his role as a House representative try and find ways to bridge the gap to say, these folks need to survive. How can we do that and yet also preserve what's there?
I think Utah was betting that the more conservative Supreme Court would at least listen. Does it surprise you at all that they wouldn't even hear it?
It does a little bit, actually, because yes, that was very much the play. This was a strategic move by the state of Utah to say we've got a conservative court. Chevron deference is overturned. Trump's about to go into office. This is the perfect moment to bring this case. And nothing.
And what must be so frustrating right now, especially with the lawsuit, is when they refuse to even listen to the argument, is you don't know what they have problems with, what way they're leaning, why they were not interested in this one specifically. Is there a way to readdress this, or do they just have to find another avenue to try to get the United States Supreme Court interested in this?
Yeah, their best bet is probably to find another avenue, because it's true, when the Supreme Court decides not to grant cert, which means they aren't going to hear the case, they don't really have to say why. They just say no.
Which is, if any of you have kids out there, that's the worst way to parent is no, because I said so.
This is Derek Miller speaking on business. Broad Fork Bags crafts handmade durable bicycle bags designed for adventure and everyday rides. Proudly based in Utah, they focus on sustainability, functionality, and connecting the cycling community through high-quality, locally made gear built to inspire exploration. Designer and owner Jacqueline Barnes joins us with more.
Broad Fork Bags was founded in 2013, inspired by the Broads Fork Trail in Big Cottonwood Canyon and a personal need to make biking more comfortable. Struggling with nerve damage in my shoulder, I created bike bags to avoid wearing a backpack on long rides. That simple idea grew into a business dedicated to enhancing the comfort, capability, and joy of cycling. Today, Broad Fork Bags specializes in crafting durable, functional, and beautifully designed bags for riders who value quality and practicality. From bikepacking adventures to daily commutes, our handmade products are designed to meet your needs and withstand the elements. At its core, Broad Fork Bags is about more than gear. It's about empowering people to live simply, sustainably, and beautifully. I feel grateful to work with incredible customers and help make their cycling journeys better. Discover our story and a variety of bags at broadforkbags.com.
Broad Fork Bags isn't just about making high-quality gear, but fostering connections and community through cycling. With a commitment to sustainability, craftsmanship, and adventure, their handmade designs elevate every ride, inspiring cyclists to explore more and live boldly. I'm Derek Miller with the Salt Lake Chamber, speaking on business.
Jeff Kaplan. When you're online, that's sometimes a source of fourth-hand information. Somebody does the reporting. Another website Googles, they find it, they rewrite it, and by the time you read it, you know the old game telephone. But KSL is a source of primary information. We have reporters on the street. They're out in the field finding out the details. And the difference between online and KSL News Radio, night and day.
Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News, 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
Dave, and Dujanovic.
The countdown is on for President Joe Biden. Just 7 days remaining before Donald Trump is sworn in as the 47th president of the United States. And it doesn't seem like President Biden is going down without a little bit of a fight. There's several things that he has done recently, largely through executive order, to try to make a lasting imprint. Another couple of things that he's trying to make before you see President Trump come in. And as President Trump has said, on day one, in the first 5 minutes, the first order of business is to undo much of what President Biden has done over the last 4 years. Joining me today, filling in for Debbie Dujanovic, is Aaron Ryder, one of the co-hosts at Inside Sources from 1 to 3. In fact, you'll be hosting Inside Sources today, 1 to 3, so this is going to be a good long day for you. What do you make of President Biden making some of these last-minute moves with just a week remaining?
You know, I just kind of have to feel for Joe Biden right now because, boy, that debate happens in June, and that was kind of the end of his presidency. I mean, he kind of disappeared at that point, don't you think?
Yeah.
And so now we're at the end of his term. He knows that Trump is going to come in and pretty much undo everything he's done. And so he's trying to leave a legacy here. He's trying to kind of shore up some things and get ahead of that. And I just don't know that it's going to work, honestly, because the thing is, when a president acts by executive order, it's very different than when Congress passes a law. And the next president can undo that executive order with a stroke of a pen. You don't have to go through Congress to undo that executive order. if Trump wanted to, and a lot of what Biden has been doing lately has been through executive order, Trump could just undo it all.
And that has been the move for a very long time, but even more recently, as Congress becomes more and more divided, that President Obama, President Trump, they've all used executive action in a very, what I see as a heavy-handed way, trying to get their agenda pushed through, because, as you said, when you have to include Congress, then it is much more difficult to turn that ship around. If you pass something like the Inflation Reduction Act, it's very hard to move away or move back on anything that was passed in the Inflation Reduction Act because it was signed into law.
Mm-hmm. Now, what could be interesting, and I know that Biden there's some things that he's put out there where it could put Trump in a little bit of a hard place with his constituents, right? So if Biden's able to come up with an executive order that pits, for example, unions against businesses, or that's very pro-union, what does Trump do in that instance? Because Trump has now been cultivating and courting the union vote. And if Biden goes out there and issues an executive order that supports something the unions want, well, now Trump might be in a little bit of a hard place. And that's an interesting play to me.
Yes, because there's no question politics is still at play. Mm-hmm. Even as you're going out, if you can do something to weaken your opponents in maybe looking to the future and what the next election would look like, then if you can make things a little bit more difficult, then politics would say, absolutely do this. And politicians have been doing that, tweaking each other or trying to undermine the party ever since the beginning, right? I mean, how many times have we read about Thomas Jefferson undermining things that one of his best friends, John Adams, was doing, right? I mean, this has been going back to the founders, where they've been sabotaging each other for political gains. But a couple of things that Joe Biden has done in his final days of office, he's moved to ban some offshore oil and gas drilling in many federal waters, about 625 million acres. And what's unique about this is, unlike most executive orders or executive action, apparently this one, the offshore drilling, is much more difficult to undo. President Trump won't necessarily just be able to say, he doesn't mean it, let's undo that, because of the way things are written. It would likely require an act of Congress to repeal. So it's one of those big decisions that was made at the 11th hour that President Trump won't just necessarily be able to wave his magic wand and undo.
And that will be really interesting given Trump's interest in Greenland, right? Because part of the whole thing with Greenland is access to resources. And there's a lot of U.S. interest in not just Trump's interest, but there are a lot of U.S. interests in Greenland. Yeah, and that offshore drilling, this is definitely something that, Trump is interested in. A lot of Republicans are interested in, because there are an incredible amount of resources in the ocean. And what do we do with that?
So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. He's obviously, President Biden is a lame duck president, right? And has been probably since, the summertime when he decided not to run. Is it taking advantage of your final days, working to the end, or is this going against the will of the people that said, we didn't like the direction you were taking us in, President Biden. That's why we voted Donald Trump in. Is it sticking it? Like, how do you kind of justify that?
Interesting
question. It's going
question.
against what the people wanted. The people want Trump's direction, and he's making some pretty significant changes in the last days of his office.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think that goes to a question that we may not be able to answer of, is Biden doing this because he's truly doing what he thinks is right and trying to put some boundaries in place to protect policies that he really cares about and thinks are the right direction to go? Or is he just trying to stick it to Trump? Those are totally different things. If it's the first one, I can be more sympathetic to it, whether or not I agree with it. If it's the second one, that's purely a political play. And then, yeah, it's an interesting argument. Does that cut against what the American people even want?
And two things can be true at once, right? It could be both of those things at the same time. Another thing that President Biden has been trying to work in the final days of his presidency is to forgive student loan debt. And he has done this, he has tried his entire presidency to forgive the majority. His promises were to erase student loan debt, and then he had several plans, and they were struck down by the courts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what he has done with student debt has largely been administrative, where he's told the administration of these loans, hey, let's forgive these, let's forgive that. Where he doesn't need Congress support, he can just direct the federal government entities that are carrying these loans to forgive them. And he's been able to announce billions of dollars in student loan forgiveness, even though the state said you can't, or even though the Supreme Court said, nope, you can't forgive student loans. That is an act that would require an act of Congress.
Yeah, I mean, I think that his latest announcement now brings the total amount of debt relief to $183 billion for over 5 million student loan borrowers. That is a lot of money. And you're right, this has been something that it's just a fraught issue throughout the entirety of his campaign.
Does this change anything? Does this impact his legacy, these last-minute changes?
I don't think so. I don't think Biden's legacy is going to be what he hoped it would be, honestly. I think he'll be kind of I think his presidency, frankly, is going to be a bit of a nothing burger.
It'll be interesting to see how he is remembered. Is he going to be remembered as will the Inflation Reduction Act, will that be remembered? Will the Infrastructure Act, will that be remembered? Or will the final months of his presidency, where you saw some pretty significant cognitive decline, will that be what he is remembered for? It'll be interesting to see, but it's only 7 days left before Donald Trump is inaugurated, and then we will see the next act as the 47th president takes over.
Hi, I'm Miley O'Keefe. In competitive gymnastics, flexibility and precision are crucial, and Les Olson IT knows how important flexibility and precision are to your business. It's why they deliver the very best IT security, office equipment, collaborative technology, and so much more. Let Les Olson IT's Perfect 10 service empower your business at lesolsonit.com.
Les Olson IT.
At the Utah Auto Expo, we have a vehicle for almost everything. Boat hauling, budget loving, serious work, kid hauling, adventure seeking. Heck, we have a whole section for adventure seekers called Adventure Utah. The Auto Expo has a vast selection of vehicles from different manufacturers all in one place. It's a great place to comparative shop. We have a vehicle for almost everything, and we certainly have a vehicle for your thing. The Utah Auto Expo, Mountain America Expo Center, January 17th through the 20th. Plenty of free parking for your current car. Go to AutoExpoUtah.com for tickets.
Do you have any idea how hard your heating system has to work when your old windows let the cold air seep in? Your energy bill is going through the roof. But there's an answer, and it comes from Advanced Window Products. For 38 years, they've been building state-of-the-art insulated windows and frames, and every one of them is built right here in Utah. So let me explain why it's cost-effective to call them for new windows right now. First, you'll see a significant drop in your energy bills, winter and summer, and right now, call Advanced Windows and you'll get $2,500 off on 10 windows or more. Triple-coated, argon-filled and sealed double-pane insulated glass that'll keep out the cold, and custom frames in any style, any color. Advanced Windows offers a 60-month, 0% interest payment plan, and they even offer a plan with no payment, no interest for 24 months. Plus, that $2,500 off right now. Call for a no-pressure consultation, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or go to advancedwindows.com.
When Jen Drummond isn't climbing mountains and breaking records, she likes taking things easy.